You are in action.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, please. Chris, would you do the roll?
Tom Schulte,
Here.
Todd Lavieri,
Here.
Michael Chen,
Here.
Chris Labrie here, Victor Alvarez,
Here.
Maria Weingarten, Robert Hamill,
Here.
Colin Dobbin,
Here.
James Yao,
He is out.
Nick Matrakis,
Here.
Jan Schaefer,
Also out.
Absent.
Deanna Carlson, ex officio. Okay,
Again? Okay, so we're good. No, we don't need to,
we have
See
one
anybody?
absent. We don't like to see anybody.
okay. All right, I do need a motion to approve the minutes, if we could just do them together unless there's an issue for the February 6th and the February 8th meetings.
There was
Okay.
just one little, there was one typo, sorry, in
Yeah.
the minutes, let's see, of the 6th. Just the word "to" was missing. Let's see. Hold on a sec.
February 6th.
Yeah,
Which one?
I'm just trying to find it again. I saw it before.
You can send it to me if you'd like. We trust you, but.
Yeah, I'll send it to you afterwards.
Change
it
the
was
meaning.
motion to approve, and it just was missing the word "to."
Oh, motion to approve? Okay.
Okay.
It's under minutes. It's right after Mr. Hamill.
Right after Mr. Hamill?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, with that change, any other questions on the minutes, comments? If not, we'll have a motion to approve. One edit. Motion, anybody?
So moved.
All right, Victor, second.
I'll second.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none? Okay, minutes are approved. All right, we've changed the batting order a little bit.
February 8th.
Say again?
February 8th.
I did them both
We're doing
together.
them together?
Yeah, unless there was a question.
Okay, nope, good.
We changed the batting order, so we're gonna start with the police building update. And then we'll have just the department chief come up, do the budget, and then EMS, then OEM, and then fire. And I would just ask just do your capital along your presentation. We're not gonna come back for the capital conversation, just keep it as part of your budget updates. And with that, over to you both. Welcome.
Todd, Coop. We're gonna do a little short tag team here. This is pretty straightforward, I think. I'm representing the building committee. I'm Tim Bell, and you know Joe Zagorinsky, who is the senior town engineer. Senior engineer. So we're very closely. We have the advantage in this building committee, unlike some of the others I've been on, where we have really a very heavy investment in the town public works department and Bill and fire people involved. The next chart is the chart you see right there is the building committee. And subsequent to this being, Amy was now, as you know, is a select person. And Tom Turney, I believe, has been approved to fill that slot. Okay. So this is the group. We have a lot of advice and ex officio on the side, and we've got a very good building committee. This picture just to give you 30 seconds of where we are. The darker shaded building is the original police building, which was built in 1928. And there was, and you'll see a picture later, it's gone. There was an extension in the back, which when it was a high school, I believe was the Twin Days. The sequence was that they built after this, at some point they built the junior high school next door in what is now the senior apartments. And then over time, in 1980, this was converted to the police department. And they did a semi-rehab on the building at that time. We did another rehab on the building in 2007 or so, where we converted the unfinished parts, the upper floor and some other spaces. We made it into a temporary town hall while this building was being built. It also was a temporary EMS building while the EMS building was being built. Okay. So it's had two sort of rehabs, and so that gave us a lot of confidence in it. And when they assessed this building, they determined that there wasn't a crack in the brick in a 100-year-old building, an almost 100-year-old building with no crack. There's got to be a perfect building for the brick, because bricks crack. So the piece on the back you don't see yet. Joe's going to show you a picture. The old rear section is removed. We'll see it in just a second. Moving to the timeline.
Yeah, sure. So,
Yeah, I was just gonna say a comment on that. Let's put it. You approved all the money for this in August of 2022. We had to do a design, bidding process and so on, and things got underway last fall. We're, at the moment, we were ahead of the in target, which was originally the fall of 2025. We may be earlier. But it's too early to count those chickens. So we're moving along. Most of the work is gonna occur this year. 2023.
okay, so the last time we presented, we were at fall of 2025, and since then, this is the exact same timeline, and we're expecting the spring of 2025, so we're ahead of schedule.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Are there savings associated with being quicker?
Okay, Brian?
Are there savings associated with being quicker?
We got, actually, we got, the answer is we got some of that saving embedded in the bid, because they bid for a shorter period of time,
Mhm.
which cut the general conditions down, which resulted in the saving. So in a way, the saving was baked in by the low bid.
Okay.
The next slide. So as far as the progress goes, since the October of 2023 update, we've moved the prime radio site, which is basically the brains of the operation, out of the PD. We constructed a temporary police department at 39 Locust. We could dispatch the required 911 and the computer aided dispatch connections. When I say we, this one's the Turner one. Turner Construction started the demolition at 174 South Avenue. And the rear of the building is gone to make way for the new addition, the Sally Port and the canopy. And as we speak, we're framing up the walls on the third floor in the original part of the building. So, and that's where we're at with progress. So for the budget, so there's a picture of the rear of the building. It no longer exists. So, but the good news is we were able to save the 1928, the main portion of the building. So it was a great one for the project. So moving on to the project budget, slide's a little small. Does anyone need a handout? Anyone have anything? Okay. So this is the slide. It's unchanged since our October update. So nothing has changed in this slide. The construction costs were set, the soft costs were set. So we've just been executing on that budget. We started the project with $1.9 million in contingency. So then if we go to the next slide.
But one before you
Sure.
go there, though, maybe. Yeah, before you go there. So Turner has a guaranteed maximum price of 20.2, right? So we don't need any contingency for that.
20.2, correct. They have a contingency. So basically
They have one in their bid.
They have one in their bid.
Yep.
And Turner will turn over the project per the plans and specifications as they existed at bid
Mhm.
time for that $20 million.
So that's, my point is, so we don't need contingency for that. So we have 1.9 million for seven.
Sorry,
Wait for this chart. We're not quite there.
let me interrupt you
We
for
do some of it.
that.
Okay,
I mean, we don't need contingency for
the 20,
what's on the plans,
for the 20.
for what's on the plans. But the
Yeah.
guaranteed maximum price guarantees that you get what was on the plans when they bid the project.
Right.
They established GMP,
Right,
advised that.
okay.
So if there's any field conditions that we run into, any changes that we initiate, they obviously, they're not on the hook.
We change the scope, we own it. I understand that part. We don't know yet, but likely not gonna change the scope?
Because there's always gonna be a number of things we discover we have to change, and those are coming up. A couple of things have already come up.
Okay, that we have to change or that Turner has discovered? We want to change the plan, something we've learned. Okay,
There's material things.
So we can go to the next.
Well,
slide.
here was the premise for why I was, yeah, no, fair enough. The thinking was they have a guaranteed maximum of 20. The rest of the delta to 27, basically .1 was $7 million, $7.1 million. Do we really need $2 million in contingency for $7 million? And what you're saying is no, but there could be changes in the base 20 million that we may have to leverage. So that's what that was. You maybe answered my question. Okay.
And there could be changes in soft costs which we haven't gotten into yet.
You can understand why 1.9 million on 7 million of cost is an awfully big contingency.
We don't have a plan to use it.
That's like aiming for Mars and hitting Jupiter. I mean, it's,
We're not targeting to use it. Our plan is to use it
Okay.
as little as possible.
The contingency is on the overall, plan, because the town is responsible for the.
I know, but when they have Nick's our construction guy. I mean, with our, maximum guaranteed price, isn't our risk for a significant contingency pretty low unless we instigate it?
We instigated or unforeseen conditions.
Right.
Yes, correct.
I would think they would include in their contingency for the unforeseen.
They do, and if it's a firm fixed price, the unforeseen condition is firm fixed price. Doesn't matter. Depends on the contract, how it's written, right?
Well, they're construction managers. The way the contract was written was Turner is the construction manager. They're working as our agent and they're managing that guaranteed maximum price.
They hire all the subcontractors.
Right.
So unless we give them a change order,
Right. And it's inevitable in projects this size, there will be change orders.
right?
And there's one which we talked about a minute, which was not one that we wanted, but we did have to deal with it. And it was,
Sure.
Let's go to it. Yeah, let's.
So the contingency update, so, we have authorized that, when I say we, the building committee has authorized $315,000 in changes to be funded from contingency. The 315,000 was, there was a window upgrade that was decided to do. It was it was important for the building committee to have a historic like window that's gonna be on the north and south facades.
I make a point
It's
about
supposed to be at
this,
there.
there are sort of half moon windows at the end of the building.
It's just supposed to be in there.
Should have been replaced in 1980, could have been replaced in 2008, they were not. If we want to go another 50 years, we need to put in the right window.
Understand.
So that was not in the original contract. That was the one.
So that was one. The second one, the detention area at 39 Locust, it was determined that with the police union, that they could not transport people necessarily without processing them at 39 Locust and possibly detaining them at 39 Locust. So it was a little bit of a program change to what they originally thought, how the process was going to go for prisoner processing. It's been vetted out by the committee. It was not taken lightly. The tires were kicked on this, every potential option, whether it was a portable detention unit, everything was discussed ad nauseum and determined that this was the best route, was to put a detention center. So the detention center at 39 Locust was constructed and is now operational.
But originally this was supposed to be at Darien.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point it was Darien, and then they signed an agreement with Norwalk, and some of the prisoner processing is at Norwalk. It was just challenging.
It wasn't that they didn't have a place to take them. It was a staffing safety issue. In other words, you had to take two people out of New Canaan to transport come there, and there were many times a day when that was not possible. And still provide adequate coverage in town. So after, as Joe said, we kicked the tire on this for quite a while, pushed back every way we could, and determined that the best solution was just to not mess around, get this done. It took us 3 weeks, and we had a holding cell was built at 39 Locust. It's operational, and it solves the personnel safety issues and kept the project going. Otherwise, if we'd have done anything else, it's going to be worse.
And one of the things that you won't see is it did save some overtime that, as far as 2 officers going down to Norwalk. So you won't see it as part of the project, but there is some offset there as well.
If I could just ask a quick question, is that 253,100, is that both for hard and soft costs for this?
It's hard and soft costs. What it doesn't include is there was a little bit of an extension in the schedule that we're working out with Turner now. It was originally a 5-week extension to their schedule, and they crunched the schedule and got it down to 2 weeks. We haven't settled out on the dollars.
Plus, they found they could do other work in parallel.
Okay.
Correct.
And can I also ask, do you know whether or not the terms of the lease at Locust require us to remove it and take it down when we leave?
I'm in conversations with them. Yes, they do not want a detention cell in their building to be left. But as far as like the offices, I'm gonna work with the landlord as far as what needs to be removed and what doesn't need to be removed, but we do have a placeholder in the budget for that.
Okay. Thank you.
And then there was a small one for 8,900, additional floor prep. That's for the leveling of the third floor. When we ripped up the flooring, part of the old subfloor came up with it, so we had to level it. It was, much better to level the whole floor and start off with a nice clean slate than it was to have a bunch of floor ramping throughout the thing. It was quite affordable.
So, oh, go ahead.
They provide you with a percent of completion,
Can't quite hear.
percent of completion. Do they provide that? Does somebody keep track of that?
For which portion? For the overall project? Yes, yeah, we get complete detailed updates from Turner and Slam Collaborative. We could review them with you offline. They're very detailed. It would take a couple hours to go through it. But and also if you would also come in, we could show it to you, or we have a monthly update.
The other thing this is a large project, right, is earned value. So when they do these percentage completion, they should have earned value, meaning I spend $1, I had $1 progress, versus I spend $1, I got 50 cent progress. And that way you can tell that at that rate, you're going to overrun. So it'd be nice if they provide this already. If not, then I would ask for it.
Yeah, we have all the details for it's 100% open books. It's a construction manager.
Right.
We have more detail than I could fill a book with it every month.
And there's a GMP with that. So protect it.
Yeah, so to answer your question, possibly, we're at basically 10%.
So 464,000 spent on the contingency so far,
Correct.
Those elements which we're negotiating on or working on haven't been spent yet.
Yeah.
Those are open items.
So how do we handle scope changes? Because this isn't money that's available. It's available for problems, unforeseen issues. If we want to put a helicopter pad on top, making things up just to get the point made, how does that get approved?
Oh, first of all, we aren't looking at scope changes. The only one that would come close to scope change would be that whole, so everything else is just to
Fine.
keep it on track.
Okay, and so no, we decided we wanted to do this. That's not contingency.
Correct.
Okay, I know we talked about that, but I just want to be crystal clear. We don't see that as contingency.
So we have a gatekeeper process. So if there's anything, if there's any item that's a contingency item or any cost that comes towards comes in and submitted to the Department of Public Works, if I see it as optional work, it's not driven
Okay.
by an unforeseen condition.
Right,
Or just
perfect.
a need to get the project going, a scope gap or whatever it may be, we bring it in front of the committee. And then the committee digests it, kicks the tires on it, and they decide whether they.
Well, maybe, Michael, it's a question for you then on the committee, and you, Jim. I think you have some pressure on you to determine just what you said. Is this an unforeseen or something that we want to do? If it's a nice to have, I'm not sure you should approve it. It's not for a contingency. It's another piece of another idea.
At this point, we may, if there's a de minimis item which makes an improvement in the appearance of the building, we might do it, but we're not looking at scope changes.
Yeah.
But but they've already run, you've already run into additional condition issues that will eat into this.
I'll give you a condition issue, which we're gonna resolve. It won't be, that it will be expensive. When they opened up a wall, they thought was concrete block or CMU. It turned out to be terracotta. And
Would it be fair, I'm sorry, would it be fair to say that the overall project has progressed to the point where unforeseen condition risk is largely behind us? Isn't that essential?
That is correct. Because the screen click, I can't see who asked that question. Who asked?
That was Tom Schulte.
Tom, the answer is yes. We are 2 months, really into serious construction. I think the first 4 months when we're
Right.
everything leveled, all the demolition is done,
Yeah.
and we're starting to come up out of the ground. Most of the big items, unforeseen items, should be
That makes perfect sense.
identified.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so the
let's come
back,
back in 3 months, come back in 3 months and we'll have a much better picture of
the
this.
building's not.
You're coming back. We're already here. You come back. Yeah, we need to know that just because I think we understand the unforeseen things clearly. We get it. We totally get it in an older building completely. However, I just want to distinguish that from other spending. We really don't want, this isn't a carte blanche to spend, you know that.
So what, Jim, is in that 100, is the soil, the oil and the soil issue, is that in that number?
It's in the 147.
So, okay, down below,
It
okay,
hasn't been sorted out yet.
I think we should just be
There- there
very
were the
open
old
about what's still out there.
Tank was for the generator, we're deciding what's have to be done, if anything. has to be done.
Yep.
So you have to excavate dirt,
Oil tank for the
I'm
first.
not surprised.
you'd have to excavate the old dirt, bring in new dirt.
That's one possible alternative. Anyway, that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
The library did this. They ran into the same similar problems.
It's a Connecticut problem.
And to say, as far as the risk goes, just to further that, we're 90% done with the demolition. So there's a lot of stuff that,
Yeah.
further his point, there's a lot of items that, the unforeseens that we can see.
Yeah.
What I will say is we have not demolished, we haven't excavated to remove the foundations in the rear. And we know that there was underground storage tanks in there. So there's the potential for unsuitable soils.
Yeah.
And that, so that would be another item that is not covered. It's an agreement. We do have an allowance for it, but you could pretty quickly go over the allowance if you run into some unsuitable soils.
Now, one of the issues that was discussed extensively a year or two ago was the question of these ground floor windows. And they had originally been open, the topography of the building was different. Now I see that they're buried in the plans. So how did you address that issue?
Well, first of all, a lot of people didn't know that there had been windows there. We dug up a picture, the whole row of windows in the original school across, which is now covered by dirt.
Mhm.
What they did in 1980 is they bricked those in and did an inadequate job of waterproofing. We're gonna draw that back, do the correct job of waterproofing. And also putting curtain drains underneath to drain the water away. It's above, the grade slopes way away from it, so that's the water will naturally flow away if the drains are put in.
And then you'll put the soil back and bury them again.
That is-
And that's it. And that whole piece of work is included in the Turner contract.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna grade away from the building. So right now it's grades towards the building, which is problematic.
Mhm.
We're gonna grade away from the building. And then as you said, it'll be excavated down, footing drain, new waterproofing membrane, and then waterproofing up even higher onto the wall. So it was looked at by a waterproofing.
Yeah, I remember this was
Yeah.
discussed several times and seemed like a major issue at the time. I guess it still is,
was a
but you
major
have a
issue.
solve.
It has been addressed. It was very important.
In the grand scheme of problems, this has to be one of the simplest things we could have to
Yeah.
fix. It's not like there's 49 tons of steel leaning against the building or something. like
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah. Okay, good. I just,
Did you want to, are you done with anything else you want to cover on the slides?
No, I think that's
You're
it.
good, we're good.
Michael, any thoughts from your point of view, since you're on the building committee, Michael Chen?
Yeah, no, I've only been briefly on the building committee. Haven't been involved in a lot of building committee stuff. I was on one of the ones in the last couple of times, but they seem that they're on track. The only conversation we had on one of the conversations was around the training center, which I think they'll talk about in the operational budget, right? You guys will talk about finding a training place somewhere in town or next to us, in the town next to us.
Chief's coming up next.
Yeah, okay. So that was the one of the things that was brought up in one of the conversations, but
Right,
know,
but Michael, that's not part of this, the scope.
no,
of
it's
this
not.
project.
No, like I said, in the scope of this project, they were just talking about the building, and like I said, I've been involved in the peripheral. I have not been involved, engaged as closely as these guys have been.
Any other questions? Anyone?
Yeah, I just want one last one, which is, if you think of the balloons and confetti in the spring of 25 and cutting ribbons and everybody applauding, and you work backwards to where we are today, I'm just wondering, do you see any critical juncture there that keeps you up at night? Or you think that, a lot of the really tough stuff, unforeseen, unknown, difficult junctures are behind us and you kind of know where you're going? Like, you have the supplies, the GMP removes like sort of supply price risk and all the rest of it. So you just tell us, between now and the spring, it's just a matter of what, getting lucky with the weather and Turner doing their normal excellent job.
Yes, as I said a minute ago, I think in the next 30 to 60 days, the level of unknowns will come down dramatically. And be able to give you a much better picture. The committee feels good about where we are right now.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. We'll see you in a few months. Hey, Tom and Colm, can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, you're
we can
good.
hear you.
Yep. Great. Thank you. All right. Over to you, Jim. I don't know. Okay. I think these are working, right?
Some of them need to be calibrated, so just if you turn it on and you like the way it sounds, that's great, but I turned mine on earlier and I blew the room out, so.
Okay.
All right, John, you're good?
Let's Polycom is here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just to talk briefly about the training center. I don't have that necessarily part of my budget because that's not something alongside of the scope of our operating capital budget. It's not something we're asking for.
Sure.
Now, I do know that there's been discussions, where to locate that is the biggest issue. And I think where we're at now is we're discussing with neighboring towns. There may be more viable options outside of town rather than here in New Canaan, but that's still yet to be determined. I think discussions are ongoing.
So what will, just on a timeline, this calendar year, you'll sort that out or have some options and then at some point come to us with here are 2 or 3 ideas and
Yeah, I don't know if it would be this calendar year that we would be looking.
maybe
at
next,
appropriate
after the
that
next, okay, okay,
it's ambitious.
okay.
Where are you training now?
Right now, we go various locations, Danbury, Wallingford. The areas where we can go and do live firearms training are getting fewer and fewer. Places we normally go to in Danbury has restricted the number of days of the week that we can go there, so we have to find alternate locations. That's why we've gone as far away as Wallingford. So
Isn't Westcog building one?
they are in discussions with it. It's not materializing the way that they promised. It was supposed to be in Newtown. It was supposed to be shared by a large number of agencies, large agencies like Bridgeport, and our time there would be severely limited. So it doesn't sound like it's gonna happen the way that they promised.
Yeah, so I talked to Francis Pickering this week at Westcog about it, and because it was supposed to be in Wilton, and then they moved it to, now they're proceeding with Sandy Hook or with Newtown at their police station there. And they have a grant from the state through Westcog that will expire in a year. So they are rushing to try and get, Newtown wants to get more grant money in addition to having additional towns sign on But it's based on sort of their cost estimates. I'm not sure what exactly they're looking to build. So it's,
And there was some misunderstanding as far as grant funding and sharing and Westcog and Newtown felt that providing the location for it was their cost sharing, but it turned out that they want more money than that.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's not materializing the way that they promised. Unfortunately. So I will launch into our budget. As you're well aware, our budget was constructed this year with the goal of adding 3 new officers, as we came here last year, requesting that on behalf of the Board of Ed, to increase our complement in the elementary schools for school resource officers. And in order to do that, we needed to add to our staff. We just couldn't continue to reassign people and pull them from their patrol functions. So with the approval, the unofficial approval of all the boards last year, we moved forward with that. We're in the process of hiring 3 new officers. But there is a significant expense that goes along with that beyond salaries and benefits. There's many layered costs associated with adding somebody on board. But we felt it was important. We felt it was something that we could support with the proper funding to staff the schools with a certified sworn officer to protect our most vulnerable assets. We also are continually doing a careful analysis of what our expenditures are, particularly in the overtime areas, with our software that we have for scheduling and those sorts of things. We take a critical look at what we're spending, why we're spending it, and being that in 2025 is a contract year, the contract will be up for renewal, we can go in there with eyes wide open and perhaps recognize some cost savings with their negotiations. Start quickly with our animal control budget. This is usually a pretty easy area to get through. It's a pretty small budget, but we do have some significant calls for service with our animal control. We had 86 calls for service last year, many bear sightings, bobcats, among other wildlife that we see around town. The animal control budget is $100,500. Some of you may recall from previous years, there were 2 separate funds, 2 separate budgets for the animal control. It was the animal control budget and what was called the dog fund. So those have been combined this year, and Ann perhaps could provide greater insight as to why those were combined. It was a little bit confusing. And just a word of clarification, what we say is dog fund has nothing to do with the canine donation account for our patrol canine. That's something entirely separate. This dog fund was licensing fees and those sorts of things. And there were some other expenses associated with running the animal control in that budget, as well as the animal control budget. And Ann can probably explain.
Is there an issue? Is there an issue with them being?
It just shows, it looks like
Why there's a difference? I get, we
There's
understand.
also revenue as well.
Yeah.
It's more of a, from an auditing standpoint, we were looking at what funds we can close
Yeah.
that are really too small. So dog fund was one of it. So there is increase in expense, but there's an offset revenue on the other side as well. It's a very, very small fund, so we're closing it out and making it more efficient.
And overall, we did decrease the animal control salaries from previous years. It used to be, last year, we had the full-time animal control officer and a part-time. We were onboarding our new current full-time animal control officer. He has taken over, and we made some adjustments. It used to be, for whatever reason, a department head position, and it was salaried at that for reasons that I'm not sure why we did that, but we adjusted it. We adjusted some of the responsibilities and we made the salary more appropriate for what the responsibilities are. So it was a decrease in the salary line by 4.92%. Any questions on animal control?
$1,000 per bear and bobcat sighting.
Yeah.
Got it. What that's up to.
Those darn bears are the best though.
So some highlights from 2023, we do nearly 15,000 calls for service a year, running the gamut from school checks to family disputes, larcenies, burglaries, vehicle violations.
Thanks for this.
calls.
Thanks for this. I mean, this is great to see. I mean, what we had talked about this a couple of years ago. I don't think anyone had, if anyone had to guess before they had looked at that page, how many calls, people would have been off by 5,000,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Tremendous. That's amazing.
We are
Busy.
We're a small town. We are busy. We're full service. Police department will go to answer all medical calls. We're in the public safety entering point. We're medical first responders. So with all of our calls, 1,300 of them are medical assisted calls for service.
Hey, Chief, on
Yes.
the alarms, the 910 alarms, how many of those are false alarms, alarm response calls?
That's a good question. I don't have that broken out, but we do recognize it's usually about a third of those are false alarms, and those do get billed. The repeat offenders do get billed.
Okay,
I think you get the first one free, and then after that, it's $100 for a false alarm. So we do try to discourage people from, setting their alarms, setting the false alarms and getting the alarm service. But we've been much better with that as far as tracking down and keeping track of those false alarms.
So you
Yeah,
literally
that-
you 600 alarm responses that are not false alarms.
Yeah, they could be, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're burglaries, they could be, for whatever reason, that,
You can't, so the false alarm would be, you show up and it was an accident, you can prove that it was an accident.
Oh,
If
okay.
you show up and you're not
Okay.
sure why.
Okay.
then it did.
Yeah, because I was like, that's like almost 200 a day,
yeah.
two a day. Like,
And
No, I just wanna- it's
Go ahead,
just, my
Michael.
point on that was just to make sure that's covered, that cost should be covered by the homeowner or whoever, to the extent it's a false after a while. So I'm glad you're collecting that $100, for false alarm, because that distracts from the workforce. Probably it's more than
Yeah.
$100 worth.
Yeah.
14,485 is about the same as last year, a little bit more.
On average,
It's about what it is. Yeah.
Right around 14 to 15,000 service.
How does it compare per capita to Darien, Westport?
It's about the same. I don't have their call for service number, but we're very comparative to Darien as far as that is concerned. About
Per
the same
capita.
size of the department.
Yeah, they have more officers.
They're 52, I think.
Something like
officers.
that. They've been over 50 for a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they also have civilian dispatchers, so. Something that we're gonna consider. years to
That's
come.
right. That's true.
Yeah,
I see that you launched a program to handle behavioral health incidents. Are those incidents in the 82 family disputes, or is that part of the 1320 medical assist?
they could be either or, it depends on the situation. Many times, family disputes are a result of a mental health issue going on in the family. And then sometimes medical calls are true mental health calls, so it really is up to the officers to disseminate and determine what's going on.
And has that program helped to address?
Very helpful,
those?
yes, it's been very helpful to guide people to the right resources to get the help they need. It's been very helpful, yes. Because it's not just show up, kind of put a Band-Aid on the situation, move on to the next call. These officers are following up in the days and weeks later to find out what's going on and what resources the families need. So it's not just the immediate response that night or that day that the call is made, it's a follow-up. It's to ensure that they don't, that these people don't get slipped through the cracks and get forgotten about. So it's been very effective in that regard.
Great.
Your practice was to go with the EMTs when they go out, right? The police try to get there first. Is that still the?
We're
That's
considered
their
first responders, so 911 calls comes into the police department and we.
But
are
but it was, I believe, that you didn't want the EMTs to go alone, that you always wanted to have police presence there as well. Is that?
For medical calls or for psychiatric calls or?
No, I mean, if an EMT gets called out Usually the police comes with it, right?
We are dispatched first.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we are the first responders.
Okay, and then the EMTs
And
come.
then the EMTs usually come right behind us.
Okay,
Yes.
so are those included in the medical assist or?
Yeah, those would be the medical assist calls. Those
Okay.
would be- yeah.
All right, thank you.
And obviously, many of you have seen us around town. We have a high priority for community impact, community relations. We have continued the community impact officer program, which that officer is assigned to the downtown area. We're in probably our 4th, 5th year. Officer Nicole Bartuli has been reassigned to that position. She was a number of years ago, and then cycled through. We've had a couple other officers, and it's a 1-year assignment. We found it to be very effective to put an officer in that position for 1 year and see what they do. They kind of make it their own. They work closely with the Human Services Department. They have a satellite office in the building with the Human Services. They work closely with the merchants, and just today, I was listening to the radio, and our community impact officer received a call from one of our retailers saying, hey, we just had some people came in, were very suspicious looking, tried to attempt a shoplifting, give a description, and that officer was immediately there in the area, put it out over the radio. But having that relationship with the merchants,
Right.
to be able to call on a cell phone and talk directly to an officer rather than calling 911 or, calling the dispatch that isn't, a lot of times, the merchants are not willing to do that right away, or maybe for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable doing that, but having that relationship with an officer that hey, Nicole, I just had somebody come in, it was attempted shoplift, and this is the description. And it was an immediate response to be able to get it investigated. So it's been very effective. We also continue our roving elementary resource officer. We'll talk more about our school resource officers coming up, but that's been very successful. We didn't want to take that away while we were looking for the funding and the staffing, so we're continuing that, although it's making us shorthanded in some other areas, but we thought it was very important to keep that role alive. Shane Gibson's been doing phenomenal work with the elementary schools, and we're working to pull it out. And after a few years of hiatus, we were able to run a Citizens Police Academy. It's been very effective, very well received.
So you have a roving elementary school SRO, but we're talking about getting 3 SROs, 1 in each of the elementary schools. Would that roving continue to?
That roving will be one of the
It's one of the 3.
Yeah, so he'll transition. So we'll eliminate the roving need for the SRO, but he'll assume the role as one of the 3.
Makes sense.
Private schools,
I'm sorry?
private schools too.
Private schools will still give them some attention. Obviously, we're not gonna have a full-time officer in all the private schools, but they will still continue their kind of liaison program and working closely with those schools. But a lot of the Country School, Country Day School, and St. Luke's have their own dedicated security staff, obviously private security staff, but we work closely with them. We've had a good relationship with all of our private schools as well. Again, continuing with some of our highlights, some of our community service, things such as, like I said, the Citizen Police Academy. They get an in-depth look at what we do day-to-day operationally. We also work closely with some of our partners, with domestic violence and child abuse prevention, Safe Driving Week at the high schools, drug take back program, and last but not least, this past year we received our 10th National Accreditation Award. It's an award that's given every 3 to 4 years. We do a reaccreditation process. It's a full on-site process that looks at our policies, our standards, our documentation, and I'm proud to say that we're nationally accredited for, I believe it's the 31st year. So it's our 10th award. I'm very happy with that. Jumping into our capital summary. For obvious reasons, we kept our capital budget low this year as far as we asked. Certainly we're asking for the building took a big chunk of our our capital request, so we wanted to keep our capital request very, very lean this year, understanding that we were getting, the benefit of a new building. And we were very fortunate too, that we were able to catch up on our vehicles last year. We were in a couple of year cycle where we couldn't take delivery. We were backlogged, and fortunately, we, received delivery. So our fleet is in good shape, so we don't need to ask for 3 or 4 vehicles this year. We're only gonna ask for 1.
How many came in? I think, do we get 7 last year? No, 5?
Yeah, yeah.
Was it 7? Yeah, yeah.
77.
And how many? We got them all?
Yeah, we got them all. We're now getting them equipped and outfitted, and you should see them on the road in the next
stuff.
few weeks.
Good.
Yeah. So,
That was a crazy 2-3 years.
Yeah, yeah. But fortunately, things have leveled off, and we're hopeful that we'll resume the normal cycle of things in the coming years. Additionally, the things that we normally ask for, taser replacements, our mobile data terminals, those are our computers in the cars, bulletproof vests, have a cycle, they're good for every 5 years. They can be replaced. Fixed license plate readers and annual contracts, defibrillators, we have those in every vehicle. Again, we're medical first responders, so if we have to go to a scene where somebody's in cardiac arrest, we have the equipment to bring them back to life, and it happens more often than not. And then additionally, body cameras and in-car cameras are another big expense, unfunded mandated from the state that we'll talk about in a couple of slides here.
The firearm replacement?
Yes.
My understanding is like if you have a gun that you manufactured 200 years ago, it just continues to work forever. Is that not the case?
That can be the case, but it's not the best case for emergency services.
Yeah, I guess why are you
We're not gonna
replacing?
send our officers out with flintlock or muskets and that sort of thing, just because it could still work. We want to have something and need to have something that's dependable and reliable in all situations. And they're carried in all conditions, summer, winter, dusty conditions, whatnot. So we try to maintain a 10-year cycle. We found that the current weapons that we have are being somewhat phased out by the manufacturer. The parts are becoming harder and harder to come by, and they are made of metal, and they do fatigue over time, and springs and coils and things like that tend to fail, and we don't want to have a critical failure. We're not target practicing when we need to use these, so when we need to use them, they need to work, and we need to be certain that they work. So we are on the 10-year cycle of replacing the firearms, which will be next year, to ask for the full replacement of our entire fleet. The reason why I added some of them on this year was because of the onboarding of the 3 new officers. We currently don't have enough in our inventory to supply those 3 new officers. So instead of trying to buy a weapon system that we're going to phase out next year, we're going to try to split the phase in of the new weapons from partly this year and the rest next year. So that's why you see that.
Did you say you use different guns for target practice?
No.
Oh, you use the same,
Yeah.
it's the same weapons. All right. Okay, thank you.
So 2 questions for you on the prior page. One, I think this is about half of the capital from last year. So that's a meaningful drop. I understand and all the reasons, but the other thing is for you all, as you know, do you have what you need? I
Yes.
mean, we ask you that every year.
Yeah.
I want to make sure, I appreciate the cut in the police building and all the rest of it, but officers first, safety first,
Yes.
all that stuff.
Yes,
So
no, and we recognize that,
Right.
and we understand that, and we certainly appreciate that. If there was anything that we needed, we would certainly ask for it. But we feel confident that this is everything that we need, and if we needed it, we would ask for it. Appreciate that level of support. Captain Frank is in charge of our fleet. We can speak briefly on our fleet needs and where we're at right now.
Yeah, like the chief said, we got our vehicles in. It actually worked out well. We switched from the Ford Explorers to the Chevy Tahoes. And we did it at a time when Ford had jacked up their prices. So with the budget amount that we had, we were actually able to get 2 additional vehicles with the Chevy price point versus the Ford. That worked out well. It just takes time. It's just logistics to get the cars upfitted on the road. So they're here. We've got 2 of them that they have decals, light sirens, but then tomorrow they get the computer software, and then another week they're going to have the in-car cameras installed, and then they'll be road ready. But we're on a good cycle now to get those going. And then like the chief said, I actually met with the mechanics of the highway today, and we went over a whole bunch of stuff and identified cars that we're gonna start to need to phase out so we can forecast and plan ahead. But, you know, they were excited to hear we're gonna get back on the, you know, the 3-car a year cycle, because they pointed out, you know, we just got an influx of huge purchase of cars, but they'll all start to fade out at the same time, so we'll be in the same boat. If we don't, you know, slowly continue to replace them here and there each year. Other than that, our cars, you know, they're in great shape. The current Ford Explorer patrol vehicles we have now, only one of them is being completely taken out of service. The rest will replace some of the old side job cars. 3 of them are needed for the SROs, so they have vehicles parked outside of their cars, their schools. But all in all, it's in good shape.
Wait, say that again about the SROs?
So the SROs each have a car assigned to them. and
Okay,
As part of the program, the car is outside.
very limited mileage, I guess, for that shift.
So
They won't be putting many miles.
Right.
Yeah.
what Captain Frank is saying is that we do a good job of, you know, these cars that we get in, the new cars, they're our main patrol fleet cars. Once those get a little over in the tooth and
Right.
we need to cycle them out, we'll put them in the secondary.
Right,
row,
right.
administrative
Yeah,
row.
I got you now.
Yeah.
That could help
Car
also.
sit in front of the school doesn't need to be on patrol 24/7, so that can be a car with higher mileage. Just needs to look good and have presence.
Yeah.
And it would send the older cars out to construction sites and that's, yeah.
We don't want to do 7 again. You know, I mean, no, that was a one-time kind of big time
They
catch
got
up.
7 for the price of
Oh,
5.
that's unbelievable. I don't know that did you tell us that last year?
Actually,
That's the sort of thing I would remember. I forgot
I think
that.
in total, we ended up getting 9 cars.
Yeah.
It was 9 total vehicles. We
Right.
were able
But to your point, we got for the cost of the
Yeah,
Ford.
we got a good deal.
Yeah.
Worked out well. Price point's definitely gone up on the Tahoe since then, so we got it at the right time.
Great piece of work, guys.
That's better for the cars.
Yeah, so, you know, as we said, it was, you know, best practices are 80 to 85,000 miles, but that's tough to put a mileage on these cars because of a lot of idle time, a lot of engine hours, a lot of other factors that are involved, so, you know, the bottom line is we work very closely with our highway department as far as maintaining the vehicles, understanding which cars are becoming costly to maintain and hold on to, and which ones we should remove from the fleet and where we're at. So thankfully, we have a great highway department that we work closely with.
You may have addressed this in the past, but if you have a car and you cycle it every 4 years when the manufacturer warranty still is in effect, is that more cost effective than keeping it past that time?
Well, you know, we do have some warranty work that's covered, and whenever it is, we'll send it down to get that work done. What we found a lot with the Fords, even though it was warranty work, they couldn't find the parts for it. We had Fords that were under warranty that were parts that just were unavailable and sat for months. So we do certainly use them with a warranty, but to cycle them out after that, I don't know if that's necessarily cost effective, because I don't know what kind of trading value. And again, that's why we work very closely with our highway department to find out what's the cost benefit of keeping the vehicle versus retiring it and moving it out. So that we leave that up to the experts, our mechanics down and kind of go on their guidance.
You just want to bring up Tiger's 1983 John Deere tractor, didn't you?
No.
That was the bar, just 40 years. No miles on it probably, right?
Yeah. And as we said, you know, Captain Frank is also in charge of our body cameras and our that. And, you know, this was part of the police accountability bill that was required from the state beginning in July of 2022. Requires all of us to wear body cameras and have all of our vehicles equipped with in-car cameras. And the funding is pretty limited for that. There's supposed to be some grant reimbursement, but we don't qualify for a whole lot of it.
So we use 38,000. We got 38,000.
So what does it cost?
Back into the program.
What is one officer and one car? Roughly
Yeah,
the cost of
every
each?
officer, patrol.
What, when the cost of each one of those is what?
Well, that's a great question.
It's on the capital.
7,500 for 4.
Page 151, body cameras, $7,000 for 4.
Okay.
In-car cameras, 13,000 for, it doesn't say how many.
I think those were for 3 additional vehicles.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cam. Tom. Okay, there you go. Yep. Okay.
And those aren't annual thing, you know, we're hoping to get a few years out of each
Oh, yeah.
body camera. It's not a reoccurring expense. And we do issue, like we said, every officer would, and previous to this, we were kind of had a pool of cameras to use. That becomes challenging when you're trying to identify whose video feed is what. So what we've done is we've issued every officer, because of this new requirement, that every officer is required to have a camera. We issued every officer their own camera, so they're responsible for it. When we dock it, we know it's assigned to them, and so we know whose videos is who, and it, you know, it can be very useful.
Does every department do, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I asked, yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you think about what you just said, yeah, of course, someone could switch shifts and they take that camera and, oh my
Well,
God.
the bill also requires that anytime you're working in uniform, so that added side job, which before we didn't have to have a camera.
Traffic or something. Oh,
We had to pull that when you're on patrol, you put one in, you
Got
put
it.
one on.
Got it. Okay.
Now it's every time.
And you only turn it on when there's an incident, or do you have it on the whole time?
When you're interacting with the public, yeah.
It was a big expense for a big town. Every car, every officer. Okay.
And that's so the body camera is about the size of the deck of cars, and then the dash cameras are pretty slim line. Back in the day when I first started, it was actually a big thesis thing that just didn't work very well. Technology's come a long, long way. That's all I have for capital. Any other questions on the capital? Operating. Our operating request is 7.685 this year. And that's a 8.09% increase. As I said in the opening of our presentation tonight, that's largely due to the 3 new officers. Without the 3 new officers, it would be closer to about 3.5%.
Yeah.
And that is largely attributed to contractual wage, 2.5%, and utility increases. So we've kept our operating budget as lean as possible. Although we are showing an 8% increase, we know that's very, very high. But as I said, that's largely due to.
We approved it. Right? Half of it was that.
Yeah.
Are you at full staffing now? Or full complement?
1 step forward, 2 steps back. So yeah, we're
Right, always, but you're a little higher than we've been in ever.
we're at 40.
We're hoping to hire 3 that the end of this month, and then send them to the academy in April. That will bring us full
Okay.
complement.
Okay. And then you have retirements and stuff.
Yeah, but there's 2 currently in the academy that we thought were part of this as a role replacement, but then we had 2 resignations, so that kind of got us back to
Okay.
net zero, but we're getting there. And that's the constant challenge is getting people on board, getting them through the academy, getting them trained up, getting them out on the road. And it's just a constant cycle, and it takes very, very long time.
So we're at 50. but
We're at 47 right now.
47, we'll-
2 of those are in the academy, so they're not really
Yep.
ours yet.
Yep. And the resignations are out of that?
They're gone.
They're gone out of that, so, okay.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is people can resign.
Yeah.
you know,
So you budgeted-
notice, and then it takes us a year to backfill those.
The
positions.
budget's for 47 or 49?
Their proposed budget is for 50.
For 50, okay, okay.
Yes.
You typically
That's his
come in,
next- I was just gonna say that's his next slide.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, but you typically come in below. In other words, you budget for the number that either we're at or we expect to be at, and then there's always something. Right?
Yeah,
You almost
we
never
used-
have one extra. You always have one less. Is it?
we used to do that salary offset.
Yeah,
that-
yeah.
We got rid of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
A little bit of a shell game, so we kind of just did away with that this year. But that was the idea behind it, is that we're never truly at full complement. Seems like we're always fighting against retirements and onboarding, but currently we have, only 4 members that are eligible for retirement, but within the next 2 years, we'll have 12 additional. So in 2 years, we could have 16 people that could retire. Not saying that they would, but it's possible that they could. And as I said, in 2025, we were up for contract negotiations. So it is a long hiring process, requires quite a bit of time to advertise, do the background checks, interview everyone, get them to the academy, which is 6 months, do the field training here, which is another couple of months before we can get the person back out and fill those vacancies. So for some reason, that picture never stays the right orientation, but you get the gist of it. So these are our school resource officers. We have a school resource officer at Saxon at the high school, and the Rolling Elementary officer. Deputy Chief Walsh will talk a little bit more about the SRO program.
Sure. Understanding that there's a significant budget impact that you already approved, but just to give you guys some more insight on it, the background on our school resource officer program. The high school goes back over 17 years. The middle school goes back over 15 years now. And as the chief was explaining, our Roving Elementary SRO has been going for 2 years now. And obviously with the great feedback we've gotten about the roving SRO with the elementary school, each elementary school, well, they all want Shane, right? They all want Officer Gibson, but they'll have to fight over who gets him. But they want an officer in each school, and the Board of Education and the superintendent were very supportive, and they were able to lobby for us to be able to up to our complement to 50 officers so that we could backfill and then provide those officers in the schools. So looking at the program itself, our unit consists of 6 officers in total. Our youth sergeant is their direct supervisor. And going forward, we will obviously keep our New Canaan High School and Sachs Middle School officers in place. They're well adored there and doing a great job, as the chief mentioned. And we will get a SRO in West, South, and East Elementary School. Obviously, the purpose of the unit is, number one, to provide school security. There's no question about that. And one of the ways where we can ensure that is by providing lots of extra training to those officers so that they're trained a little more in de-escalation to the population they'll be working with, and in use of force if necessary, obviously, as well. And the second purpose of the unit is to embed those officers and integrate with the school community. And the other SROs have done a great job with that.
Sorry, you know what, I was just to explain, can you just go through what we have a rover that covers the 3 elementary schools, why we have 3 new officers and not 2?
Sure, I'm sorry if I didn't explain that properly. So the roving school resource officer, which is now and has been since the start, Officer Shane Gibson, would be one of those positions. So we would be removing the roving SRO.
Right.
Once we start with the 3 SROs in the elementary school. So you would remove that position.
Yep.
And then we would just have the 5 officers, the New Canaan High School, Sachs Middle School, and then each elementary.
So
school.
Why is it not 40?
Shane's been taken from our patrol force for the last 2 years.
Oh, you needed him and you were
right
giving
now,
him
there's
to
a
the,
vacancy.
okay,
We
got it.
allotted money
There we
for
go.
him.
That's the answer.
We allotted money for him to cover the
Okay.
offset on the shift.
And you'd like to bring him back to get your compliment.
Well,
back
I'd like
the
to
normal-
back
to the
that
normal.
position, yeah,
Right.
because that's shorthanded my patrol
Yep.
staff. That-
Technically, he
That's the
takes
answer.
what's called a shift bid, and he sits in the patrol shift still, so. We just had to cover that.
Okay.
And like I
Does
said,
that impact your overtime right now?
yes, that. And there was a metric on that as well.
Yeah, we try to track it as much as we could, but it's definitely costing us.
Okay, thanks.
So the idea is to have specialized roles for the 3 elementary school SROs, because a lot of the questions that come up was, is it just going to be another school security guard that happens to be armed? Obviously, we want to make sure that the elementary school SROs are just as dynamic as the SACs and high school SROs are. So the idea would be to have them, one officer would have a specialized role as a safety and physical security officer, specializing in lockdown drills and physical security, et cetera. Another one could be a safety education officer. There's a good program, for example, in Fairfield, it's called SHAPE. It's safety, health, and positive environment. It expands on the old DARE program to provide help with bullying, online safety, in addition to drug education and working on kids' self-esteem and things like that. And it works in tandem with their health teachers and health curriculum. And another officer we're thinking would be a liaison officer that would work with the PTA, Board of Ed, other committees, and school groups as well. And obviously, we would provide specialized training for these roles. And we have been meeting with the leadership, the principals, assistant principals at each elementary school this past week, in fact, to make sure that we have a shared vision for the program. And they're very excited and they share the same vision as we do. And we have an upcoming meeting with Dr. Lutson to move the program forward even more.
Now, the entire squad is trained, cross-trained, right, on all of these specialties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's specialized training for school. There's an organization called NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers. Captain Frenga and I actually met with the president recently and spoke to him at length, and he advised some advice and who to talk to and get some ideas. So.
Right, but each SRO would have knowledge of the safety and physical, the education, and be able to step into the liaison if necessary.
So the idea is each SRO we would use their certain skill sets when they're selected and enhance on those skill sets to make sure that they each have those abilities, and one of them would have a little bit extra. So one of them is going to have more nuanced idea of safety. For example, Officer Gibson has a very strong understanding of environmental skill. There's something called crime prevention through environmental design. And Officer Gibson is very adept at that and working with lockdowns. And that's a strength that we would enhance for him, just to give an example.
So they would all have a baseline.
Yeah, because you never know, with God forbid, the emergency happens.
Yeah, no, they would
Happen in any
all have
past, right?
a baseline school resource officer training. And they would all be familiar with the other schools. So the beauty of this allows us, if one officer is off for whatever reason, typically they don't take vacations unless the school's on vacation, but if an officer's out on training, mandatory training and whatnot, or out sick or whatever, we now have a pool of officers that can bounce around the other schools.
Understood.
And I know the question came up about the private schools as well. We have, I think the chief explained that we have a school liaison officers as well. So we have officers in patrol that aren't assigned full-time to the schools, but they do liaise with the schools for different events, they'll assist with lockdown drills as well. And they attend to the private schools as well. So we would continue that program for them.
Part of their normal patrol day-to-day duties would be stop in and check in with the private schools. And they're not required to be there by all means for the 48-hour shift, but they'll pop in to the country school or to St. Luke's, get familiar, find out any issues, and then continue on with their patrol shift. So that's been a program that's been successful as well. That's it for the school resource officers. The next thing, big thing that we want to talk about every year is police overtime. It is a large chunk of our operating request. We understand that. And as you can see, we really try to track it and understand it and understand where it's coming from. And we found a few things this year that we weren't aware of in previous years that are concerning to us that we're working with. But overall, there's about 10,000 hours of total overtime that we're recognizing in fiscal year 23. And the largest portion of that is an administrative, which has kind of become a miscellaneous category. But what we found that's residing in there is overtime for officers that go for workers' comp appointments, physical therapy, whatnot, doctor's appointments, and working with Human Resource Officer, Human Resource Office, we're gonna see if we can get that transitioned out of our budget and have that go directly to our insurance provider. That's something that, you know, we should get reimbursed for, and we weren't entirely tracking it well, so that's gonna be a significant cost savings in that area. Additionally, training, we always like to see that as a high number, but unfortunately, a lot of that is travel time. As we said, we have to send our officers to outside locations to do some of the mandatory training, and, you know, to get an hour or two training out of them, we have to pay them 4 hours because they're driving an hour each way. And a lot of these other items are kind of what I was talking about as far as contractual things that we're hopeful that we can look at and work with our union and see if we can't get some cost savings in our future contract negotiations with the shift shortage. It's something that we're seeing is growing over the years. Officers like the time off, and contractually we're obligated to grant it. But it does create shift shortages that cost us. And you can see on this next page, all of these items here are all shift shortages in one form or another, meaning that our shifts have to be minimally staffed with 5 officers, and for whatever reason, whether it be a sick call or a training or injury leave or a special assignment or one of the other things, it requires us contractually to hire back for a vacancy that gets our shift below a certain amount. And it's a significant cost, as you can see in the slide here. And it's something that we're looking to address and see if we can't rein that in a little bit. But as I said, we do some significant training. A lot of it is mandatory, including firearms, emergency dispatches. There's a number of things that we have to go through every year to maintain certification. But we also try to get our officers as well trained as possible in other areas: active threat training, use of force, defensive tactics, de-escalation, leadership training, and as we spoke of earlier, school resource training. That we want to get those SROs trained to the top of their ability.
Hey, Chief, it's Tom again. You do have a line item in your budget for, there's a medical certification stipend.
Yes.
Is that what would come in? Because that seems to have, you know, we kind of gone hovering somewhere just shy of $20,000, and then we popped up over 40, and I just wonder what the backstory is on that.
Yeah, that's for their stipend. It's a contractual obligation thing. So more and more officers are eligible for that and trained for that. So that's a stipend that they receive for, I think, the EMD certification, CPR, AED. It's a contractual obligation that we're able to. It's a pretty accurate number based on the number of officers we have. And
so
again,
there's just a great number of our force is eligible for this stipend, and whoever's eligible, we're contractually bound to provide it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And that's one of those things that's kind of creeps in with the 3 new officers. So there'll be 3 additional officers that will be eligible eventually for this stipend. So it's one of those things that's above and beyond just the contract or their salary and benefits that they're eligible for. So we have to account for that.
Yep.
How
Understood.
many other stipend situations do you have in your
Some of the other ones are like an educational stipend, longevity. Again, the education benefit is if an officer wishes to continue their education and go to advanced college degree, we reimburse them up to $4,000 a year. It's unknown every year how many are going to participate in that. Obviously, we encourage all our officers to do that, but it's somewhat of a moving target. Some years we have a lot of officers going to get their degrees, whether it be a bachelor or a master's. In other years, it's less. So,
Do you have a deadline in the contract for when they have to notify you that they want to do that?
no, they do have to get advanced approval
That's a good, Board of Ed has that in their.
Yeah, we would have to, we'd have to negotiate that. That's one thing. we'll have to
No,
negotiate.
obviously, but it might be help for
Sure.
obviously
Planning,
planning and
yeah.
making people. you know,
Yeah,
some-
an annual commitment type of
And-
thing.
and
We just do a straw.
And some of these stipends are annual pay, right? I mean, it's just.
Yeah, usually they're split up twice a year.
The person, yeah, I mean, but the person is qualified for, say, the medical training. And that's entitles you to a certain dollar amount stipend, and every year that's paid. So,
Yes.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like the schools, this is. how
Yeah, if they
people
have that sort of.
Can augment their,
Ordered that site.
their salaries, yeah, okay. I get it.
Overtime is time and a half, is that how it works?
Yes. Generally speaking.
Well, what's the salaries holiday sellback for 290,000?
That is, when officers work a holiday, they can get paid for it. It's another contractual benefit. It's not something that we set. It's provided for us in our budget along with the salaries. It's something that's just contractually in the system.
Those are for the federal holidays? Okay,
Yes,
so
yeah.
okay. Actually, I just have a quick question about the uniforms. I see the uniforms are going up 50% or 54%.
And the officers have to equip them and get them all initially issue from bulletproof vests to all of their cameras, all the equipment to outfit a new officer. So that was a large driver of that.
So all that stuff, the bulletproof vest is not on another line item, it's on their uniforms. Oh, uniforms and equipment.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
53% were ammo and weapons.
Oh,
guess
yeah,
it's-
I'm
I
sorry,
guess that's-
28%. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's again largely attributed to 3 new officers when they're at the academy to have something like 2,000 to 3,000 rounds. They have to go through the initial training, and that cost is consistently going up year to year in the last 5 years or so. It's just growing substantially. So adding 3 new officers that have to go through the initial training phase with a lot more ammo. So that's why that went up significantly as well.
Hey, Chief, you're saying 4 officers are retiring this year and 12 more next year. So that's.
No, that's just eligible to retire. That does not mean that they're retiring.
Oh, okay.
I'm
So,
one of the 4 and I don't plan on going anywhere.
Where you going?
hey, okay, all right. All right, so it's not a significant amount of replacement you're gonna have. In the
No,
next-
that was just more or less to show our exposure, as
Right.
far as who could retire. And then, you know, because we often discuss the delta between when a retirement occurs versus getting somebody onboarded. So
Yeah,
right now,
Okay.
our staffing is pretty good, but even, as I said, you know, right when we thought we were good, 2 resignations came in.
right.
See coming, so.
Do most of the new hires come in through the academy, or is it possible to get transfers from other towns as well? Is it just?
We do take lateral transfers. That pool is dwindling. You know, I think that was successful for a couple of years, but it seems like most of the hires we're getting now are entry level, so they'll have to go to the academy.
Right. Okay, I was wondering
How
about,
how does our pay compare with comparable towns? Are we losing people because we're paying less, or are we attracting people because we're paying more?
I think we're attracting people because we have, you know, not necessarily that we're paying more, but we have good salary, good benefits. We have a solid pension fund, which is a definite draw that we can certainly leverage. But our pay is comparable to other towns.
So the 2 people who left, did they go to other departments or?
Yeah, one came to us from California and went back, found that he would go back for family reasons, and then the other one was more of local, but also for family reasons, decided that he needed to go up to Pound Ridge. But you know, understandable, but you know, generally speaking, that those are kind of rare that we lose people that quickly. Most of the time they'll stay and stay for the duration.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
Chief, it's Tom. Would you say your how can I say this, that the substance of your dialogue with those of your workforce who are in frame for possibly retiring, would you say that that has improved, is about the same? In other words, your ability to look around corners and anticipate, you know, what we might actually experience in terms of
Sure, so,
kind
yeah.
of turnover?
This last contract, the union received the benefit that it's a deferred retirement benefit where an officer can start collecting his or her pension prior to retirement, and that's usually can be anywhere from a 1 to 3 year term, and that for obvious reason gives us a good insight as to when they're going to leave. Once they enlist into that program, they're locked into a retirement date. So a couple of the retirements we saw last year gave us that forecasting, so we were able to get ahead of the curve a little bit as far as hiring the replacements for those retirements. But we do have, you know, conversations. You know, we're a pretty small department. We know kind of sort of when someone's planning on retiring and try to read the tea leaves a little bit. But with that deferred retirement plan, that has been helpful. But we don't currently have anybody that signed up for that. But when we do, that's very, very helpful.
Any other questions? I have one. Overtime. So just going back to 22, FY 22, you did about 460,000 if I just use the categories you're using to get to 590. In 23, it was 714. I forgot why. I'm sure, and then this year, looking at 530, next year 590, average about 573. So the 590 is a click over the average, but there was that one big jump.
Yeah, and that surprised us as well. And I actually went in and I could share my screen with I looked at Darien Ann's overtime as well, and they recognized the same jump that year. And I think it may be because
FY 23 was half 22 calendar, half. I just wondered if there was.
So I think the dip in 21 was COVID. I think nobody was going anywhere. Vacations were pretty limited. I think we're still pretty locked down. And then I think the best I can assume is that after that was a spike of people then all of a sudden traveling,
Vacation crew.
vacations, kind of making up for lost time. I do know that part of those years, we did see, for us anyway, a significant injury leave cost. We had some retirements of supervisors. We had some injuries, long-term injuries of supervisors that were just unforeseen, kind of the imperfect storm type of situations where, you know, they were out for several months and we had to backfill on supervisory positions. So those were very, very costly to us. Fortunately, those don't happen every year. But you know, comparatively, we're less than Darien as far as you know, overtime costs, which is a good thing. But they did see kind of that similar spike in that you know, that dip down in 21 and that spike up in 22, 23. So
Do we have a jump in officers, number of officers?
did we?
Did ours go up that year? You would think more officers, maybe more overtime.
I don't think it actually equates to that. Usually,
It might have been the opposite.
yeah.
It isn't, it's not a big deal. It is, we can't change it, but I just be.
And your overtime went through, if I remember,
Was that?
there was a real shortage of officers.
Yeah, so that.
So
year we did
the
have a bunch
meter
of
really was
retirements.
running all the time,
Like I
yeah.
said, supervisory retirements.
Yeah.
Again, those take time to backfill those.
Yeah, I think that was the problem, if I remember.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just remind me again what the salary offset was.
That was kind of what we discussed, that we're never at full complement.
They budget for a head
We
count.
say almost annually that we're gonna be short an officer. And that was
Just did
kind
away
of
with
a-
that.
well, we're not gonna pay the salary because we don't have that
Yeah.
person on staff.
Actual is actual. You'll end up, someone resigns, you didn't have it in your budget, you're not gonna replace them in 5 minutes, probably. So there's always a little
Right.
lag. Plus you're getting junior resources for retirees. That tends to change things around a little bit. But
Right.
anyway, you do the best you can to get the number. My recollection is you've always been under, you always budget, click higher than actual because of that.
Right.
You almost never have 52 when you were planning on 50.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
5 officers per shift. has it always been that way? You said that was in the negotiated contract. Has there ever been a time where it was like 3 or 4 officers per shift?
Not in my recollection, not in my 30 years. It's always been 5.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Great job.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Let's see, EMS. Welcome.
We'll jump right into the budget.
Yeah, jump right in. We've got, want to bring your slides up or?
No, I mean, we're just gonna work off the page 12.
Okay.
which is Where our budget is. And, I guess.
These guys are lean.
capital budget. So the first number, which is the paramedic service, that's the 24/7 paramedic supplied by Norwalk Hospital. This is the final price of the new 5-year contract for $465,000. So that's the new 5-year contract, which that will be a fixed price for the next 5 years. So the way to think of that is to compare it to the $399 from actual fiscal year 23. And it's about a 16% increase, but that's 16% over 5 years. So very reasonable in my mind. And part of that is that we're contracting with Norwalk EMS, which is effectively a nonprofit as well. So they're trying to just pass through their costs to us. The next number, so there's, we've made a change to the categories here. We formerly had a town contribution of some 63,000 in 24, which has been broken out into vehicle repair and maintenance, the third line, and medical supplies and equipment, which is the third from the bottom. And that's so the vehicle repairs and maintenance of 9,995. And the medical supplies and equipment of 56,643 add up to 66,638, which is a 5% increase from fiscal year 24 town contribution. Have I lost everyone? If that
Nope.
convoluted? Okay. So that's the town's contribution that goes to our vehicle repair and maintenance, as well as our medical supplies, which is mostly the equipment that's on the rigs. And it will be used fluidly across those two categories, but there's a 5% increase from last year. The next several numbers, electricity, fuel oil, gasoline, water, are basically costs that are given to us by the town. As is the voice data number. And the final number, information services, is a contracted number from the state for our dispatch services and CMO medical facility. That is the final number that we've given. I think that'll be a one-time payment which comes on July 1st. It's a 1.1%. And that's, yeah, but that's largely out of our control.
Maybe I missed that. What caused the jump from 23 to 24 in the first line?
What, could you repeat the
What
question?
caused the jump
So
from 399?
The 399,840, that was the number under the contract, the 5-year contract.
Okay.
The number jumped because this is where they started the initial negotiations on the contract for last year's budgeting purposes. And so that was the number of what it looked like it would be, but it actually turned out to be. So the number was 465.
I'm sorry, so when they started the negotiation for the contract this time last year, Norwalk Hospital was proposing a number around the 525. And so the contract wound up being at 465 for the fiscal year. So I'm not sure what the FY revised 524,400 is from our purposes, because this is paid by the town on a monthly basis.
But the actual
For
for
FY
fiscal year 24 will be the 465.
Josh, where are we right now on that line?
Just,
Or-
just 271.
Through December. So 6 months, like if I double that, that's, because that would be 6 months, that's still high.
540.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So will they reduce their billing for the next 6 months? Is that sort of the thought?
We can look into that, but it shouldn't, should reconcile to the 465.
Okay, so that's what we're anticipating, just so Josh, and we
That
should
is
make
the
sure.
contract.
So
So that's
for
the kind
this
of-
year, it should come in at 465.
So that is a fee that we pay Norwalk Hospital to provide a medic,
On staff.
On-
24/7.
and it's a different person. It's not the same person.
Yeah, it depends. They have
Yeah,
varied
But,
shifts.
but whoever, if we need a medic,
They're always.
They're always
obliged To have one with us. at the
and that's
station.
the fee we pay to Norwalk Hospital for their providing that guy. Okay, or woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many years is this contract now for?
Is it 3?
5 years.
Oh, 5.
So it's a 5-year contract at 465 flat, no increase over the 5-year period?
That is correct.
Yes.
That's great. Okay.
Good job.
So, I mean, yeah. I'll take
The
credit
medical
for it.
staff,
That's
that's pretty, the medical
Outstanding.
staff, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's what you said, 16% over 5 years. It's not too bad.
So I think it
Yeah.
should end at 465, we do 38,750 every month. Times 12 is 465.
Okay. Anything else you wanted?
So on the operating budget, that's it. It's fairly straightforward and simple from that perspective.
You have everything you need, as we always ask?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Like another
Well,
driveway next to the police.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Well, they laughed. You had your chance. You should have said, I have a question. Where's my driveway?
Exactly.
You're getting your own heat, your own water, you're getting your own Wi-Fi, everything's getting disconnected.
Oh, boy.
We're just in the transition and the driveway, I think we've found the right solution to make sure we don't have any real problems getting the ambulances out. So that's all looking better.
I think the capital budget is reasonable.
Well, we're looking at the capital budget now.
Well, it's 0 in my book.
For this year it is. Because we order a new ambulance generally on a 3-year cycle.
Mhm.
And we order a new fly car for the paramedic on a 5 or 6 year cycle. So we'll see, that, in the current year, we
Mhm.
have a new ambulance, which is on order. And we've had all sorts of problems with timing because of supply chain issues and I don't know what else. So, and I guess we don't need to go into it. Like when we actually get that ambulance and have to pay for it, probably will definitely not be in this fiscal year. And we don't even know if it'll be in next fiscal year.
Wow, so
Wow.
2 years to get your
Yeah.
ambulance, maybe 3.
It actually drifted out.
I was just gonna say, isn't that at least 6 months or a year longer than we talked about last year?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
yeah. In the last 4 months, somehow it got stretched further.
So this one, you're looking at 2 years from now.
So that just means our oldest ambulance will have to be stretched a little more and hopefully it's, theoretically just a trade-off with more maintenance of big trucks that should last.
Yeah.
But not ideal from our perspective. But the point is, looking forward, we have another ambulance budgeted for
Next year.
26, 27. We have a number in there based on what we thought the cost of this one that we have on order is. We don't know where the numbers are gonna come out. So we just continue to work to refine those numbers as we go forward. As well as the timing and whether we should be ordering that ambulance.
Well, that's the question.
sooner.
Next year.
Yeah, or at some point. Yeah, exactly. During next year. And I understand there's a bonding process and everything that has to be done before we can order that. So we should probably be working on it now, but we're dealing with the driveway.
Well,
Priorities.
And delivery.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
So that's just a heads up on the capital.
okay. Any questions?
Your facility is going to be integrated into the police department.
No.
No, there's no,
Our facility remains standalone and.
It's going to be more separated than it is.
Yeah, in fact,
currently.
they've already had to sever various utilities
yeah.
and lines that we depended on. from the-
Where would the parking for the ambulances be?
They remain in the bays. in
Where
the
they
back-
are,
the
okay,
back
so
of
that
the
nothing
building.
changes.
Nothing changes with the new police station from our perspective, except that the driveway reverses. So I think we're
Right, that's right, yeah.
going in one way and going out the other way. now.
Okay, yeah.
I don't even remember how we used to do it. It's that one driveway.
Okay.
Any other questions? Bob, anybody, or Michael, Tom, anybody online have a question?
No.
Excellent, thank you.
All good.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
everything.
Thank you.
You guys do great work.
How are you?
Good evening. How is everyone?
Good, thank you.
All right, let's see if I can share my screen. Wow, like it is.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you. That way. so- Okay, we're up, it's on.
Yeah.
And excellent. All right, good evening. This is the FY 25 emergency management budget request for those. Not had the pleasure of being the tax emergency management director for the town of Canaan. You may have heard me call it all odd hours about emergencies, power outages, weather storms, mayhem. So, emergency management's mission obviously is protecting the lives and properties of the citizens of New Canaan, planning and preparing for emergencies. The big task for us is we maintain our town's local emergency operations plan, which I am proud to say we just submitted a brand new one this December. Over 300 pages, and as such, we'll be receiving a $5,000 grant from the state of Connecticut for completing a new emergency operations plan. And that was done in partnership with my thanks to all the department heads, because in a true emergency, every department from Public Works, Police, Fire, EMS, Human Services, it touches everyone, and they're all integral components of creating that. We plan and prepare for emergencies. So we actually conduct training, which will show some examples of that have occurred over the last year. And we collect and disseminate emergency information. So the Everbridge callouts, as you've heard, providing that kind of warning and updates from the town as to what is occurring and what people's recommended actions are during emergencies. We coordinate with the state, local, and federal agencies. So not just our internal departments. A big part of the role as the emergency management director is the upward facing towards the state. We integrate with the state emergency management regional coordinator. So whenever there's an incident that requires additional resources, which as a small municipality, if we have something large, we will be relying on our neighboring towns and or the state, as well as federal agencies such as FEMA. One of my roles as the EMD is public assistance grants. So whenever we try to get money back from things like COVID and things like that, that's in my remit. That very long process. Sorry, I claim this one back. So what have we done over the past year? Very proud to say we've had a lot of tremendous collaborative training and exercises. This is a regional exercise on community recovery to mass violence that was held in February. And you can see representation from public and private schools, our health department, including our SROs from police. And so a broad group, including even the Voices Foundation, New Canaan, Mary Fetchit, and some non-governmental organizations that would be partners with us in exercise. So this was a long-term discussion. This was a discussion about the long term. How do you do with a family assistance center? How do you help families after a crisis? How do you help them navigate, whether it unfortunately may be a fatality, the process post-mortem, or how do they go through the process of recovering through FEMA and things like that? We conducted school reunification training in March with our public schools and our SROs, as well as some representatives from St. Luke's and Country School, which I'm excited to say we are
advancing that again this spring and summer in partnership with the Crisis Advisory Board for the schools, which I sit on. And we're moving forward with more comprehensive training and planning with regards to reunification. Heaven forbid they have a unplanned evacuation or relocation of a school, whether it could be just a gas leak or active violence, whatever it might be. How do you reunify the parents? So that's something we partner with the schools as with emergency management. We hosted the region's state emergency preparedness drill, thanks to the New Canaan Library and their wonderful new facility. And so New Canaan hosted it. We actually had all 11 towns across the region come to New Canaan, and we work collaboratively because any major emergency, I work with our partners in the emergency planning team to plan and bring them here. Because anytime something happens, we're going to be leaning on Norwalk, Wilton, Stanford, and building those relationships. Which was great because these are things that I would not have been able to do if I were not full-time in this role, because working nights and weekends, these events and these activities and all of this networking and training occurs during normal working hours. We accomplished getting community preparedness, which included Stop the Bleed kits, as well as mass casualty kits and body armor out of our capital last year. So EMS and fire have received protective equipment. Heaven forbid we have an act of violence. Which unfortunately seems to be on a daily cadence now on a national level, as well as our SROs, as you see, receive some tactical kits for Stop the Bleed, trauma, those sorts of things. In addition to that, we are scheduling, we had a schedule for March, it's been delayed a bit, bringing in the state at no cost, state instructors for medical response, for tactical emergency casualty care. As emergency management, our role is to bridge all of those departments that this touches. We're the ones who are focused across not just police or just fire or those lanes. How do we as a town plan, practice, and prepare for those sorts of events? We went through our PPE and disaster supplies and restocked a lot of our old expired PPE. I know everyone shudders when they see masks and things like that. My hope is that we never see it at no cost to the town. We were able to secure replacement N95 masks, gowns, and equipment from the state through a process, picking it up at distribution centers. Our wonderful interns helping with the process at Irwin of storing and inventorying everything. We've had a number of responses. We had an incident at the New Canaan Police Department where their battery backup system actually caught fire. So it was a fire incident, and I responded with emergency management to help us get our communication system back online, which actually had failed. And we called, as you see, the Fairfield County Communications Response Team to provide their vehicle as well as their cache of radios so that we could continue to operate even though our town system or radio network had failed and gone down. As well as the New Canaan Family Fort, where I work with partnership with all the chiefs to establish our operations plan for it. And heaven forbid there was any sort of emergency or mass casualty incident, that we knew what we were doing before we hit the ground, and then also got us our command post for the operation. We've had flooding, and then the last one I wanted to bring light is just in January. We're very fortunate to bring FEMA and Texas A&M, which is part of the National Preparedness Consortium. Again, at no cost, they flew 3 instructors from all across the country who are subject matter experts to run a 2-day management course on Emergency Operations Center, all hazard operations and planning. And Deanna ended up being the mayor of the city of, I can't remember the name of the city.
I was very,
Yeah, and
I was, on the take.
yeah, she was with the stadium. She wouldn't want to
Really,
say
I was a really bad.
Smallville. Okay.
It's like, what?
And it was great because we had over 45 participants across not just all of our own town government, regional partners, and then town partners in town. It was hosted at Grace Farms, no cost to us with the space grant. It was an excellent 2-day exercise, kind of an eye opener for people and an opportunity for people in our town to start to use the new plan that I wrote over the last year. Actually use the books and guides to help them in their position with Tucker as a PIO and in their various roles. So moving very quickly to the budget, I zero base our budget request. I need to minimize apps. Salaries, there's only me full-time, and that is provided by HR. Our salaries part-time line was removed in the Board of Selectmen. We had a stipend of $15,000 for the deputy director, which we can talk about a bit later if you have further questions on that. Obviously, the concern here is that it is a 24-hour on-call position, and a deputy director, whoever that might be, whether it is an individual who receives a stipend, or a paid employee of the town who perhaps receives a stipend because they would be assuming additional roles beyond their initial job description. It is a vacancy, or will be a vacancy come July. We've been very fortunate that Phil Shively, who's been the deputy director, who's been with us for since I started in 2020. He's continued, he's done a wonderful job. He's done a lot of the training, which I'm going to get into, the requirements that the state seeks as guidance for someone who holds that role. But I certainly would encourage, even if a partial refunding of that line would, I would recommend. When I look at our peers, we see in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000 as a stipend for a deputy director is not unreasonable.
I have a question on that. Should we talk
Yes.
about that now? Bob Hamill. So Phil, he does a lot with CERT, right? And he helps leverage our volunteers with CERT. It would seem like I'm a big fan of leveraging volunteerism in town. For $15,000, do we want to do away with Phil? I mean, I definitely want to cut money from our budget, but the other, that's just a sort of a thought and a statement. In the presentation we got had a big red line through that number, but your presentation doesn't have the red line, so I don't know where it stands. And then another question to follow on, it said year to date, it looks like you've spent $60,000 on the 60,220, yet the budget was 15,000. Could you explain that as well?
Yeah, so I think that was just because part of my salary was incorrectly put to the wrong line. And I can
That makes sense.
But it was just allocated to the wrong line, so we haven't actually overspent. And so far as the actual position goes, Phil and I both work with CERT and Stuart Salvini and their team, because any CERT activation has to be authorized by the emergency management director or the deputy EMD. We're the ones who are that conduit to the state so that they're covered by Title 28 protections. I think even more important when it comes to the deputy director role is if this is a 24-hour position. So I'll give you an example. When we had the flood warnings, I received a phone call at 11:30 that night and another one at 1 o'clock that night from the water companies telling me that they were monitoring the situation with their infrastructure, things like that are constantly on call. If something happens and we need to get an emergency communications with Everbridge out, whatever the situation may be, that falls on the two of us to do those types of notifications. So when I'm on vacation or a funeral or whatever it might be, someone else is filling that role, and there is a handoff, and the cell phone is forwarded, as is the other, the desk phone, as well as email, and someone is monitoring it because of the fact that it is that type of position.
Russ, can you talk about what other towns do that don't have a full-time emergency management director in the situation? So like, my understanding is that is like a police fire handoff, or there can be some sort of like, and before you were in the role, I believe it was a volunteer that had that responsibility. So I think that was the discussion, Bob, about, is it?
Yeah, I get that. The only thing that I see a little bit of a conflict of interest is, and no disrespect to the police, but they would rather probably deploy their own professionals for overtime than, I would just think that there would be a natural bias, and I don't mean to insinuate anything, but having the independent person activating CERT might create a greater utilization of them. Maybe I'm completely mistaken, but anyway, just a thought.
So to provide a little context, yes, when Mike was doing for 2020, it was a volunteer position, and we were very fortunate that someone was available during daytime hours to be able to be on call if an event lasted multiple days. I know that would have been very difficult for me as my time at Morgan Stanley. They were very understanding of it, and thankfully we never had a situation where I had to pull out of my job on Wall Street for 5 days to manage a town incident. They were always usually short duration, or I would take vacation time from my full-time job to be able to try to fill that role. I think that it's important to note when you talk about the EMD or the deputy EMD, when you have an emergency, a fire chief is focused on fire, rescue, hazardous materials, and managing their employees. A police chief is also focused on managing their department, their employees, and the law enforcement. The reason why an emergency management director role came to be after 9/11 was you need a person whose focus is on across all of the departments, the strategic, across not just an individual public works or one domain. It's understanding not only the bigger picture and managing the town's emergency operations center, which is where the decision-making happens, and I am the right-hand advisor for the first selectman, but also the one that's focused on calling resources, accounting for resources and the dollars spent, so that we can then go back with NEMA and others. So I just want to make it clear that in a lot of places you will find, and what Greenwich has a full-time EMD, Bridgeport does, they do exist, but they are in larger towns. Darien just recently had a assessment done, and it was recommended to them as part of their fire marshal, fire chief assessment, that they should have a EMD that is full-time. I think we will see nationally that is moving towards that trend. The other towns that do it, I'll use Wilton. I was actually in Chief Blanchfield's office for Wilton Fire today. He does it as he's the fire chief and also the EMD. And his words exactly were, right now I'm spending about 80% of my time doing the emergency managed stuff and not doing the fire chief stuff. He's fortunate because he has a paid assistant or deputy chief to help him shoulder that load. If you find cases there, you can find some cases where a police chief, I think Easton, their police chief is the EMD, and they receive a stipend to do it in addition to their full-time role. The problem is when you have an emergency, when you have a large scale incident that isn't just one, take for example, one house that's on fire, and maybe it's more, or it's flooding, or it's across a larger impact, they no longer are your police chief. They are way too focused on dealing with the flood of calls from residents, the discussion from the state, the questions from the media, everything else. So just to provide context. And I put up here.
I just want to, from a budget point of view, I want to be cut to the chase on this. There's no red line on his because it's already taken out of his mind. It's got brackets on it, Bob. That's the 15,000, right?
Oh,
Right.
okay. I see, I
So,
see what I.
that's
see
okay.
I see
Yeah.
mine has the red line, and his
It just says
part-time is still, it's
basically the
still
credit
there. I
of
see it.
15,000. Yeah.
No, it's, if you look at the Board of Selectmen recommended, it's 15,000 zero, so it's fully zeroed out.
Yeah.
That line.
That's what it is.
Oh, I'm very sorry, very sorry.
Okay.
Well, Phil
All right.
seems like a bargain, 15,000, but if you want, you can do it alone, then
Well,
I don't know.
I guess from our point of view, the question becomes, first of all, just from a process point of view, the Board of Selectmen, I don't know what the vote was. I'm assuming it doesn't matter. They passed this out. We don't like adding people back in. This isn't a specific expense of some kind. This is adding a person. Once you start to add people, that gets expensive. Then you have equipment. You have maybe in some cases a car, and it starts that up.
Right,
Not in
well,
this
it's
case.
a takeout of a person, right? No, I get it.
The other
Because the
point of it
person
is,
the person. Yeah,
I'm not comfortable doing this, and I don't think we should be comfortable having a conversation about adding a emergency person, because the thinking and the logic is the police and the fire are going to be busy. Timeout.
right.
Let's have a
But remember,
conversation
we're
with police
taking
and
someone
fire.
out. Yeah,
Let's have
yeah.
everybody together to say, how will this work?
Yeah.
Before we think, I think that's probably the right, I would like to know the answer to that before I just agree to add a person. And then when I could have the police, I won't speak for the police. I don't know what they'll say, but it seems to me towns figure it out. I actually have zero concerns that the team that we have, you and our chiefs and chief over here on the fire, they're going to figure it out, and they'll do what the right thing is to do.
Right.
And I guess I'd like to hear how that would be handled before we go and look at a silo to say, okay, they need more because this other department won't be able to help, which is what
But
you're
it's-
arguing. I'm not. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
but we're taking someone out. I'm just, you're not, which is fine. But it's not like we're adding someone in. It would be status quo if we didn't take them out. We're taking someone
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just to be
That's
clear. So as long as if Russ can, go it alone, then that's fine.
I think
fine.
we have internal conversations to figure out when I'm out of town, out of state,
Yeah.
how that's handled, which I think.
I
we
think
don't need to
that's-
discuss in this forum. I think it's just important to note that, other locations, for example, Wilton, their director and deputy director do get stipends. This is not a full-time position. It is merely a stipend. There are no benefits that go along with it. There is no car that goes along with it. None
Right.
of that. It's merely a-
And we're taking that
Someone
stipend
being
away.
on
That's-
call
yeah.
24/7 when I'm here and participating in exercises and training.
Right.
Can be doing working hours, which you can see here. I think it's also equally important to mention that we do get grant money that offset either of our salaries. And in order to be eligible for those grants, this training that I'm showing here has to be completed, which in the case of this is at 43 hours of training, the certification courses, to be eligible as a deputy and emergency management director in order to receive those grants. So we've worked out to about $11,000 a year.
Is that one time or annually?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we're taking the 15,000 stipend out. So presumably next year you won't come back and say, well, we need a deputy director at 80,000. That's all I'm checking. So
No.
this stipend is
Certainly.
gone and this person is gone.
Correct. It means that the stipend is gone, and hypothetically, I haven't had that, again, I think that, I don't want to speak about that in public forum, but we have to have a discussion with the individual who's in that role to see what their intentions are.
Again, it was
Fine,
when
I
it
would
came,
just be
it came
against
to us after.
bringing on, I'd be against bringing on a much more expensive solution
Well,
next year when we have a $15,000 solution now. That's all.
15,000's taken.
It's still there.
And as I said, I think that looking and discussing with some of our peers, 7 is reasonable. And we're not talking about a huge lift, but they are on call those times when we're.
Oh, okay, because they zeroed it out.
Yeah, zeroed out.
Why do we have 60,000 in year-to-date 24?
Oh, we just answered that. It was the, my salary was allocated the wrong way.
Right, Josh, I think that's his salary.
I think it's used to be a part-time.
Yeah.
I think on the
So-
payroll side, it just got switched over again.
So your salary is the top line.
And it shows that we haven't paid him yet.
Yeah, okay.
I think we're trying to say, this wouldn't be the first time we'd have figured that out by now. I'm guessing Russ might have shown up like, just again, it's a process issue. I'm not debating, I'm just, the selectmen voted on a reduction there. And what I'm hearing from you is you have a concern. I'm reacting to that. I'd like to actually think that through with fire and police and you in the room on how do we have to handle things like you're on vacation or a major thing happens. It feels like you just got this role and now we're sort of really learning how to do it, and other towns don't even have what we have. I think we're fortunate to have it.
I just don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. You know, an assistant fire chief is hundreds of thousands of dollars and a 15,000 stipend here. I'm just trying to think holistically. And, but it sounds like you've already agreed. And so therefore, I'm going to say no more on the matter, but I'm just trying to think holistically, and I can see next year that might be a request for a deputy at 100,000. It'll be like, well, what happened to our great $15,000 volunteer? But anyway, I've said enough on the matter.
No, look, great input. Duly noted. By the way, we're not voting on anything tonight. You're getting both sides of the point, and I think when we have our vote in March, we're going to have to address whether this makes sense to bring it back or not. Bob, by the way, it ought to also be done also holistically and all the other costs we have that are,
No, I know. Trust me.
Fair enough for you. This is a,
I want to be very clear. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a resident of the town. I've been dedicated volunteers with fire for 26 years. I get it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know you do.
Look forward to the conversation.
So let us take that all under advisement, I think is the right answer.
Okay, so salaries, OT training, actually, I removed that this year. That was, in discussion with the chiefs previously, because of the fact that I hold exercises, we hold exercises such as the FEMA one that I showed the pictures of. It does bring in officers where potentially a sergeant or whoever from police or fire could occur overtime because they're doing that training. It ended up being, the mechanics of it ended up being a nightmare, trying to code the payroll, track the payroll, have me be the approver, not the simplicity, just get rid of it. Yeah, so that was removed. That was a recommendation that I said we should remove. Social Security and 401 are provided by HR. Service contracts are down $1,500. The reason for that is we removed our 3 GIS licenses, Tiger and Public Works. It'll be in their budget, not in mine. So we have 3 $500 licenses for our GIS. I also recommended we remove on-site contractors entirely before we even went to the Board of Selectmen. The reason being is we were going to have a contract with an electrician to make sure that we had them on call for our large towed emergency generator. However, that emergency generator will be tied up at the temporary police department for the next 2 years, so no need for a contract. Solved. Training remains flat. We historically underspend training, but I want to have that there so that if we want to bring in an outside subject matter expert, we did our exercise 2 years ago. We brought in some expert from California. This year it was free. I got it from FEMA and the federal dollars And that will be, of course, what I will always strive to do. Repairs emergency equipment is we have custody of several state assets, and this is to replace bearings and tires on the trailers, the VMS signs, things like that. Meals and events is to buy food for people during training, such as the exercise we did at Grace Farms. We feed people, they arrive, they show up. Supplies general is for the paper office books, as Luciana realized in her first couple of weeks on the job, a giant binder printed out with all of our plans. Voice and data is up, and part of the reason is because I transferred funds from some of these other lines. The biggest reason that is up is because we have one Starlink satellite data, which is our absolute backup plan, because as we've seen, internet can be questionable at best. It's a single unit, and it can run our AOC. It can run 3 or 4 computers, 6 or so telephones, and it's our absolute fallback position. And it's $3,000 a year as a subscription. We bought the equipment, that's good forever. We don't need to buy equipment ever again. Uniforms and equipment, $3,500 of that is our contribution to CERT, the volunteers of the Community Emergency Response Team. We have, the last 2 years, been at the town has provided $3,500 for equipment. So that is reflective vests. They just refreshed and bought their new road closed signs with the little springs that kick out. Some lights to put on their vehicles so that at night they basically safety equipment and PPE. So that's the contribution for that. And equipment emergency is flat to last year, and that is this year, because I zero base everything. I'd like to purchase $900 of MREs because our MREs are expiring. They're good for usually 5 to 6 years.
Tell them what MREs are.
What's that?
Tell them what MREs are.
Meals ready to eat, sorry, the Marine and me automatically just, yeah. Meals ready to eat, combat rations that basically you can just open them up and go without having to cook. So if we ever have to shelter people, the first day we're covered. We know we don't have to worry about it. I'd like to replace one computer switch for our EOC. We have a couple rolling carts, and I want to get a new Cisco switch because the one that's in there, I think, is back from Tim Cole's days. So I think it is about time to be replaced. And I'd like to get, I'm trying to dribble a couple of the new, it's just a display that connects to our virtual machines for the EOC. So the ones that we have 6 stations, one for Dion, one for myself, one for each of the, they are probably going on 10 years. So I want to just replace a couple every year. And so those are, I'm estimating $2,000 for that, and a new UPS of $400. So that's where the funds for equipment emergency go.
Out of curiosity, what kind of grants or like dollar amounts do you get for different things from state, federal?
Well, so the good news is a lot of the stuff that I've been able to acquire over the last year has been at no cost. So I've been able to get it out of state pools. Jen Allison and Health also got some COTS for free through the state. The only grant that I have right now is the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which is the EMPG, which is the one that I mentioned before, which is $10,000 to $11,000. That can be used to offset salary, or it can be used to offset any of these other lines. We use it against salary. And then also the $5,000 that we received for redoing the emergency operations plan. Of course, we keep our ear to the ground with Greg, who's a wonderful resource to find out anything and everything that is available to exploit it as best we can. Capital. We only have 2 items, so we did the items last year were sort of that one-time course correction. This year we have the 4th year of our Motorola hardware and software update agreement. This is a contract that's a 5-year contract with Motorola. For those who do not know, we have a public safety radio system, which is for police, fire, EMS, public works, and CERT, and that is what our first responders use to communicate with each other on radios. It has hardware, it has software. It is a system that requires support. So this contract is a proactive update of the hardware and software, and also provides 24/7 on-call support. And the last year of it is actually 2026-27 year. 27 and 28 out years are absolutely a guess because Motorola provides little to no transparency for analysis purposes.
It's not going down.
No, I would assume not. However, as I've mentioned before, we are observing Wilton and our neighbors who are now switching onto the state system to see if that will be the better path for us to go onto the state system, or we don't own the infrastructure, we just use their backbone. Their process is taking a lot longer than they thought it would. I thought they'd be online this year, they're not yet. Probably because they can't get parts, just like everybody else.
Do police and fire have them as well? The Motorola Tri-Band, that's in there, it's in your capital. And so do you all buy it together?
I mean, we'll all share the same quote, but we're purchasing different radios. So I am purchased 3 this year and I'm looking to get 3 in this budget request. The reason being is I'd like to have a cash in the emergency operations center that I can hand to, depending on the situation, Brian Lutzy, to whoever the players are. We're at the 4th of July, so that I know that I have at least radios that can interoperable with other towns and in our key leadership in whatever the emergency.
But are you buying your 3 and are you buying 5 and the police buying 3? And are we all, is there any way to bundle this and maybe do we get anything out of Motorola by doing that? Has anybody asked the question?
No, so I've asked the question, and whether we have 5 or 10 doesn't have an impact on the pricing. We are secured in the state pricing because we were using programming of the state bid, so there's no cost savings at the volumes that we're buying.
We put the quotes together, except they're coming in on different ones. So the number of radios is counted for, but it's just coming in on different quotes. There's really no savings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Russ and I did it.
However, we are saving money in the fact that between Fire and myself, that we will be sharing programming. So it'll be one programming across all of them, which is actually good as well, because then anybody can pick one up and use each other.
Well, if the point is for the whole thing to be interoperable, I would hope that's the kind of, at the infrastructure level, we're putting some things together. Good. Okay. Questions? Anybody?
Yeah, it's Tom again.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I'm not sure I can tick and tie all the capital items on your slide there, Russ, with what was on page 129 of our book, which is our 5-year. We get the 182 and change. I'm trying to figure this out.
Total capital number?
Yeah, so if you look at the 5-year capital plan on page 129 of the summary, I was just trying to follow that a little bit. And so what we're saying is,
Well, 24, 25, you're asking for
139, 226 plus 33.
173, 172 something.
Yeah, 226.
It's about the same. Okay, that's right.
okay. Yeah, all right. So that
I have 172.
Yeah.
172. All right, so that works.
You
And
see
then-
some up years, but I think that's also 180. No, it's not. Actually, it's the same. Next year, 24, 25, 20. That's up.
These all work.
And my hope is actually 25, 26, where you have the 10,000 EOC 80 telco. I fully intend on that being gone. I just put it in placeholder.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
Well, actually, one question I had, so on the grants page, I don't see the 11,000 on page 132. Unless it's buried in some other number.
Netting against salary.
Oh, you're netting against your salary.
I don't know that, that's.
Yeah, I guess that's a question.
Is that what you did? The 10,000?
TNPG?
That wouldn't be an offset to this. I think that's an offset that could go against many things. And if it was a specific grant, yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly over salary related ones that come in. It's a reimbursement that you've got like 3 or 4 outstanding.
I agree, they're pending. We're waiting for.
Okay,
So
so,
it's usually against salary related expenses that we put into the grant.
okay, so then the grants on 132 are just non-salary related grants?
The grants that usually show up in other, or in general, what shows up in other are state grants that we have, like SAR or those that just being there, or it's coming from fund balances. That would also be.
Thanks.
Any other items, questions, Michael?
Nope.
Paul,
Okay.
anybody, Bob? Maria, you good? Okay, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Russ.
Thank you, Russ.
Okay,
Last one.
last but not least, certainly not least.
Russ, is that your water or is that somebody else's?
Not mine.
Okay. I want plants with it.
Uh,
Out of it.
The fire brigade.
Fire.
Welcome,
We left our buckets back in the station.
welcome, welcome.
The horses in the stables.
We did use those
Not this week.
before my time.
Yes.
But before.
Well, the structure's still there.
You tell us when you all are ready.
We're ready.
You're ready. My name is Jack Warner. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chair of the Fire Commission. I am joined by the Director of Fire Services and Fire Chief, Chief Albie Bassett on my left. To my right is Fire Marshal Paul Payne, and also
Joining us is fellow Commissioner Beth Jones, right here. Thank you for having us this evening. Chief Bassett will discuss our accomplishments, our current and future goals, and the value add that your fire department delivers to New Canaan 24/7, 365 days a year, and we've been doing it since 1881. So Chief, I'll pass the beginning of this over to you.
Thank you. So good evening all. I just want to start with the fiscal year 24 goals and objectives that we have accomplished. Our public education continues, which as every fire department will tell you, prevention is the most cost-effective way to keep people safe. And that's 63 events this year. We went down a little bit with some schools not scheduled this year, but 63 public education events, 40 public service events, whether we set the ladder up or did something for another organization. We installed 40 smoke detectors, 30 carbon monoxide detectors, and gave out or changed 100 smoke detector batteries. So a lot of keeping people safe preventatively there. We were able to bring our ISO rating down, which is a good thing, from a 4 to a 3, which does affect everybody's insurance rate. Well, no, I can't say everybody. If your insurance company uses ISO ratings, there's a potential that homeowners insurance will go down. More importantly, commercial property insurance could be reduced based on that increase in the rating, decrease in the rating.
Do you think people know how to take advantage of that? Or comment on it or inquire about it with their insurance carriers?
Well, that's, I think, when we put the press release out, that we did mention, call your carrier to see if there's a way to go down. For resident is reasonably small, but it's money back. It's really good for the commercial to relook at it. Can't say we're done with this one, but we're evaluating our department against national standards. You're going to see that as a continued goal also right now. So we're looking at all the NFPA standards, OSHA, ISO. So we're re-looking at a lot of that to see where there still is room for improvement. We implemented our new records management system, which includes a computer staffing software in that. So we're starting to track, as PD talked about with their system. We're managing that a little easier, kind of more proactive with that. It also is handling our inspection, our fire marshal's office, all the inspections they're doing, our pre-planning and incidents and training records. We got our rescue boat in service. That was one of our capital items, for flood events, high water, and it's also dual purpose for ice rescue. So we were out just a month ago in Mill Pond when it got cold, and they were doing recoveries, removals of victims in the water with the boat. So that gives us some water capabilities in those rainstorms. The numbers, what we did for calls for service last year, 1,133 calls for service. These were actual 911 alarm company calls. This is, may not have responded lights and sirens, but for easy, that's what we responded lights and sirens to. 50% of those are fire alarms, and I did the quick math after you asked PD. I'm going to say 65% of them were the alarm system did what it was supposed to do. Okay. These were not fires, but that meant somebody burnt toast. The contractor was sanding, and the detector doesn't know if it's smoke or it's dust. But the detector did what it was supposed to do 65% of the time for the fire alarm. So we have some repeat customers on these.
No names.
The 35% that are malfunctioned, sometimes they come. The problem with fire alarms is they'll come in twice in the same day. If they're malfunctioning, they malfunction multiple times in a day. So that's where we get those. So that's where we are with the with our fire alarms.
You like going last.
What's that?
You like going last. You heard all the other questions, and Jack's ready to. Okay.
23 times we responded out of town for mutual aid. 17 times based on our calls, mutual aid companies came into, New Canaan. So that's, that ties into a few different things, you know, especially radios and stuff like that, which you asked about with the last presentation. That's key for Gus going out of town, as I spoke a couple of times in the last few years, safety with the radio. So they are getting ready to come to the Board of Selectmen for purchase next week. That we can start making that purchase and getting those radios in the hands of our firefighters.
And is this about the same activity as last year? Is this
Yeah,
more or
we're
less the
right-
way it's running?
Yeah, we're right about the
prior?
same. 155 simultaneous incidents, doing the, you know, quick math, that's 3 times a week that, someone in the community doesn't get the service that they're expecting. We're delayed getting to the call. That's really increasing our response time from what national standards, you know, try to get us to do 90% of the time. And about 155 times a year, we're not getting that first due piece on scene in a reasonable amount of time because of the multiple calls at the same time.
And how many fires were there?
Fires, this year we had, it was 3%, so I'd have to go and look at the actual number, so 3% of that would be, I think, 30 actual structure fires per, this is NFIRS, this is our reporting system. So we had roughly, thank you, 33.9. Roughly 33 fires get classed as a structure fire under the National Incident Reporting System. That could mean it was a pot of food on the stove, so no damage, no cost. We did have 160,000 in fire damage this year. So it was not bad at all.
Knock on wood.
For all those
Yeah.
houses we responded to, with 160,000 of fire damage, that was roughly $29 million that was saved on the positive side of that was lost compared to what the house values were. So yeah, so that's the way. So what you would see as a large structure fire, that technically 2 of them would have got chalked up to that they were significant.
2.
Last year.
Okay, 2 big ones. That's an interesting statistic you just said, that that was $29 million of property. Worst case scenario.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's 100.
And those, what I do is look at the actual, out of those 30, you know, which ones were significant that, okay, we had a kitchen, pot of food on the stove. It was a boiler that actually, you know, fire or chimney fire that was progressing in the fireplace. And that's where I take the value from those houses.
That's
And, you know, chimney fire really doesn't have much loss, but that's where that.
But the simultaneous incident number. So that means that you're rolling all the equipment and another call comes in, right?
Mhm.
So how many pieces of equipment can you roll at once?
2.
2.
And then we're waiting on.
So the third
volunteers.
call,
Well,
2 go to 1.
2 go to 1 call. We might have to split them off, and now I'm not getting the level of service. So I shouldn't have said response time, because if the officer decides to split it off, I might not, you know, the response time might not be affected, but I don't get the 6 that were expected to be on that initial.
do you always roll 2 pieces of equipment to every incident?
Not to, no, some non-emergency calls would only get 1.
But they're all different. Each truck is a different type of truck and they have different things that they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So
These simultaneous, it would have started, it would have got counted as a emergency response. The second incident might not be emergency response on the simultaneous.
And then you were about to say, then you have to wait for volunteers to come in. So if you had another incident, you have a call for volunteers.
Yeah, they're coming in, you know, on the initial call, they're coming in. So most of our calls are Monday through Friday during the day, which is our numbers are really down. If it's a night or a weekend, I might have volunteers in the firehouse. I could take that apparatus out. But again, it's not getting that same staffing as the first piece that went out.
Okay.
what's the closest mutual aid for us.
Depends
Depends if it's
on,
north, it's like, when we don't have it with Pound Ridge, right? It's just.
no, yeah, Pound Ridge
Yeah.
and Vista, yeah,
Okay.
they'll beat us to some calls if they
Okay.
get called right away.
Yeah.
Wilton on, the top of Valley is gonna be there pretty quick,
Okay.
Stanford, if you're coming up,
So does your
West side.
system like decide, which
There's a-
department to go out to for?
yes, our
mutual aid?
CAD triggers mutual aid at the dispatch center. They have to unfortunately look in a book right now. We're trying to get that rectified through our dispatch system. But the book tells them who the mutual aid companies are that would respond. Yeah, we're trying to get that all electronic for them. That's it.
Civilian lives.
We saved them all. Yes. As far as fire related, we saved all this, yes. In progress, we're still working on getting rescue task forces for active shooter events, active assailant events. Still working on that with Office of Emergency Management, PD and EMS, trying to pull that together and have the training. In progress, pre-planning the commercial district, which significantly impacts our ISO rating. So we need to keep that up and even make it better. So we're required to do that annually of all our commercial businesses. And that's the on-duty, that's the line firefighters. That's separate of what Paul does in the fire marshal's office. He has to go out for an annual inspection or biannual inspection on a lot of these places. We go there for pre-planning for a fire or any type of emergency that happens. So that's required of us. And we're still trying to take advantage of grant funding opportunities. So we continue to file the ones that we can file for, and hopefully one of them is going to come along and we'll grab it. So 25 goals. So where are we looking for this year? Continue evaluating national standards. We're looking at about 20 different ones that directly affect us in the community. So all the officers, the fire marshal's office is going through those to just see where we are. And then, which ones do we want to attempt to meet? And if we want to meet them, what the impact is or the cost. Again, pre-plan, continue, that'll be an every year goal. Enhancing our firefighter health and safety. There's a big push on fire service cancer. Now, the state has passed a law for fire service cancer prevention. So we're really looking at that and what the law is asking us to do and some of the best practices to see where we are with that and trying to make it safer for our firefighters with what they wear every day, calls that we're responding to, and so on. So we're actively working on that. Always trying to improve water supply infrastructure. That, again, that's another big ISO impact. If we don't have water in certain areas of town, that is something we are taking a different approach on it. Myself, fire marshal's office, and highway, Tiger, we're going to look at that after budget season. We're going to look a lot closer at that and see what the best practice, where could we get the most bang for our buck to put in water supply in the ground. So usually cisterns or trying to get into a pond or something like that where we don't have any water right now. So there's a lot of areas that are directly affected by that because we're too far away from a water source. So.
I have a question about the previous line.
Yep.
So the cancer rates are higher among firemen?
About 9%, 7 to 9%.
And is it the smoke at the location, or is it the chemicals that you guys use, or
Yes.
what's the carcinogen?
It's multifold. It's definitely the smoke, the toxins in the fires today. And unfortunately, you heard the PFAS commercials. Our gear does have PFAS in it for water, for not soaking up water. So that's the biggest thing with the PFAS is so.
PFAS is where in the?
It's in the shell of the gear. It's basically so it stops water from water repellent. That's what it's the big thing that it's doing for us on the gear. It doesn't soak in the water, which is bad for us. So a good example is that why I don't want water. Think about if your pot holder is wet and you grab a hot plate, it goes right through. So we can't it's got to repel the water. It can't soak in like our cotton or anything else. So can't use polyester, it'll melt. They put PFAS in the materials they're using to repel the water, so it doesn't soak in. So that's what the manufacturers are actively trying to get it out. I don't know what that's gonna do to gear moving forward, turnout gear, but that's a conversation for another day, if that's gonna reduce the time we can wear it as far as years, or, you know, what we're trying to do is limit the times the firefighters are putting their gear on. So if there's calls that they don't need to wear it, it's at the ready, but we're going out in station wear and we're making sure the station wear is okay for every call that they're going on. So they can, you know, be safe, you know, for what they're doing. Increasing our special rescue capabilities. Unfortunately, we just had a technical rescue, the trench collapse over at Silver Hill in December. But we were looking at this prior to that. A lot of our rescue equipment has gotten outdated, not the best practice to use some of the stuff now. And by NFPA standards, they recommend replacement at a 10 or 15-year interval. So we're going through that. All the officers are looking through their specialties to see what needs to be replaced. So that's kind of comes up in our replacement planning tools and equipment. And our FY25 goal, which we'll talk about, was hiring the career assistant chief to fill my position that I was hired for in 2021 before I was promoted to director of fire services, fire chief. Do you want to have me start this or?
So, when we presented this to the Board of Selectmen, they asked us if we could take that out of the budget. We'd like to readdress the topic and, you know, so as you can see, as part of our current goals, we do wish to hire an assistant chief, but I believe some history will provide a better perspective of what we find, the situation in which we find ourselves. So I'd like to draw attention to like 5 quick bullet points, and I'll keep them brief. The assistant chief role is an integral part of our public safety and business plans. Secondly, the need for the modern career assistant chief position was identified and approved in the 2021-22 budget, thanks to the help and support of the Director of Human Resources, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and Town Council. Thirdly, we then hired Chief Albie Bassett, then Assistant Chief, as that person, and that Assistant Chief, Albie Bassett, reported to Chief Jack Hennessy, and that occurred in the third quarter of 2021. Subsequently, Chief Jack Hennessy retired in the fourth quarter of 2021, and Albie was promoted to chief. The AC position then reopened. For the 2022-23 fiscal year, we budgeted to fill the assistant chief position. However, the town came to us and requested we postpone filling the position at that time until the next budget cycle. The purpose was so that the town could use our funding for the assistant chief position so that they could hire the emergency management director. We obviously agreed to that, and the budget funds were transferred. Lastly, we then budgeted and were approved for the assistant chief position for the latter half of the current 2023-24 budget year to allow us time to begin the recruitment and hiring process, which is currently in progress. So here we are. With all due respect to the decision by the Board of Selectmen, but we thought we'd like to revisit it, please.
And I think, just so the Board of Finance is aware, the Board of Selectmen added 70,000 in overtime to sort of help with
right, it'll come up.
Okay.
This will come up.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's all connected.
No,
We wanted to make sure why, because the next question is why the increase in overtime line, and that's kind of the background of it, just to show you where we are now. And again, this was, if we have the career assistant chief in there. So fire marshal, Paul Payne, has his office. I have the volunteer fire company, I have administrative, part-time administrative assistant. The assistant fire chief, which happens to be Russ Kynes, our emergency management director, is the voted in assistant chief in the company currently. We just under 20, it's changed over, we had a couple resignations. We're at 24 volunteers right now. Unfortunately, 50% are currently probation. We're working through their basic firefighting now. So we're getting them up there. I only have 2 line officers there. So there's basically half of my department is volunteer firefighters that do the same job as our career firefighters. Need to be trained. Everything's got to be the same, except they don't receive the salary, nor do they get a second set of gear. So there's all the training's going to be the same. Paul has a Monday through Friday staff. He's just like myself, Monday through Friday, but he's on call 24/7, 365. The fire marshal's office comes with on-call responsibility. Since our fire department's 24/7, the phone continues to ring on a Saturday night when myself or Paul is out on, with family. So that's something that both of us, we understand. That's part of the responsibility of being emergency services, but we don't have anyone to turf that to. Paul's the only fire marshal in town. He can use his 2 part-time inspectors, but one of them is a career firefighter in another city that could be on shift. And the other part-time inspector is a fire marshal in another town. So at times they are tied up and can't cover Paul when he needs to be truly off duty. Our career side, again, with 24 career firefighters, 24 365. They work, and I'll show you the org chart in a second. There are 4 groups, 6 firefighters, which include a captain and lieutenant on each group with 4 firefighters, and it's a 24-hour shift, and then they're off for 3 days. So it's a 42-hour work week that the fire service does to do that. I'll just throw one thing in as far as our personnel, just to make sure everyone understands. I've asked for 2 firefighters with planned retirements. These are not going into the overall staffing. These are firefighters we need to get into school prior to the retirements that happen in 25, after July of 25. It takes 4 months to get them through school. Unfortunately, the size of our department, I can't guarantee them both going in at once. So I can't ask for both of them in the spring, because then we'll have a vacancy until December. So that's why I've asked to stagger, get one in the fall, and then they'll go on a day shift in the spring of 25, and the second one would start the academy in spring of 25.
So that's what's in here. That's in the budget, the way you stagger it and add it. Okay.
That's how we're staggering. It's just, I cannot guarantee. We go into a lottery if they have over a certain amount of recruits at the academy. And based on our size department, we're guaranteed one. I go into the lottery after that. So that's where we stagger those 2. This is my org chart, okay? With the career assistant chief, volunteer assistant chief, fire marshal, it kind of breaks it up a little bit. We have a lot of volunteer vacancies also, just because of their level of training. This is what I work with now, working with each shift, and everything reporting straight up to the chief's office, fire marshal coming into the chief's office, and all of the volunteers coming into the chief's office, through the assistant chief. So that's kind of a huge span of control. That's one of the challenges that I have, is that span of control, that working with every single officer on everything. I'm the training officer. I'm, the chief. I'm the apparatus repair supervisor. I take care of the building. So all these things, because I'm there Monday through Friday, when I put officers on these things, which we'll talk about the overtime, it's great. I have officers that want to handle things. I don't see them for 3 days. If I have to be out of town for a mutual aid meeting, I don't see them for 4 days, which makes it very difficult. Now it's phone tag, and it's really something I need to pay overtime for when I'm working with them on the outside. And that's where, and they all have shift responsibilities. So the captain and lieutenant are part of this minimum staffing. They respond to calls. They have to provide the training on shift. They do the pre-planning with the, so they'll split up half and half to do the pre-planning. So on their 24, they have to do all the regular stuff that they're assigned. And then that overtime is going to offset, some of my things, and they have to come in on other times of the week to do that. So that's kind of where we are with the with that. And what they can't, the things they can't do, obviously they can't represent me where the chief is required. An administrative person, especially, with mutual aid chief meetings, a lot of things might get discussed that we don't, the unions aren't involved in, the union firefighters are not involved in. They can't supervise other line officers where that's one thing I need to work with each officer. That includes discipline or anything like that. Counseling, they're not able to do that. That's all the HR functions that I'm responsible for. Obviously negotiations down the road. Budget functions, I'm getting them there. I'm trying to, bring them up to a level that I can give them a budget and work with. That's not what we do as firefighters and lieutenants. We know, okay, there is a budget. They don't get that type of training yet until they get up into the upper officer levels. And again, the fire marshal duties, which is one of the things we were going to look for in the assistant chief, was to offset Paul, get the assistant chief into fire marshal school so they can have the same qualifications as Paul, that he or she can do an investigation. They can do a fireworks detail, even when they pay, when another, like a private residence or the country club pays for fireworks, Paul's got to be there if it's not one of the part-time inspectors. So we would have that other person that would be able to fill that role. Yeah, and then it's just the some of the the OSHA requirements, a lot of the document, again, as the training officer, documenting all the OSHA requirements, the ISO training requirements. The consistency with training is a challenge. I try to get in once a month to do a training across all 4 shifts. That's basically 16 hours out of my month that I'm trying to do that to keep the shifts aligned, because everyone's coming in off duty on a fire. They're working with each other, and I'm trying to keep certain trainings that everybody's doing it the same way, and then turf the rest of it off. The company officers will handle that. So that's kind of where we are. As far as the push, the reason why the assistant chief, and we don't get a lot of fires, that's a good thing, but those 30 calls a year, that's something where myself and or currently Russ, as the assistant chief, we are trying to be on all of those, and there's times that we're not, and that's dangerous to the on duty. We're waiting for a chief from out of town to come if both of us are tied up with something personally at home. So we try to, small percentage, but we try to manage that someone is always available to have that fallback duty if something does happen. And I respond out of town. Those 24 mutual aid calls, I go out of town because right now our firefighters can't talk to the Wilton Fire Chief. They can't talk to the incident commander in Norwalk because they don't have that radio. So I have to stand next to that incident commander. When our firefighters call out, they just went to Belden Hill and Wilton. When they call out, I'm standing there, hey, New Canaan Engine, saying that they're all clear or they got something going on the second floor. I have to be that voice for them outside. And that's until we get those radios up and running, which has been a challenge, but we're there. We're getting the quote going now, but we're getting there. That they're gonna have that capability right now, in another 6 months by the time they get delivered. So that's where we are with the with why the request for the assistant chief and with the ask to revisit it. So that's kind of the reasons why. This is our this was my budget before the Board of Selectmen and our major increases. So it was 200,000 increase, 4.43%. And again, the additional recruit school firefighters is just under 100. That is about 70,000, 75,000 for those two. The career assistant chief for the year. The training budget actually went down. Remember last year we asked for a lot because of the EMS training. We were able to reduce that almost 40,000 because we did shift to a on-duty EMS training for our career staff, and we're supplementing it with a online learning management system that they could do anytime. So we were able to use technology for part of it, and the training person comes in once a week throughout the fall when they need the hours. Our apparatus emergency repair budget, I asked for a decent increase there, 20,000. Our fleet is getting old. They do a great job. Our firefighters do a great job of taking care of it, but they're 20, 25-year-old pieces that they're keeping on the road, which is great. It's just been a lot of major repairs that we've been getting hit with above and beyond the regular service. As First Select person said, their recommendation with the cut of the assistant chief and the position was a 2.79 increase, 126,000. The estimated that I came up with stuff that the officers could do in an overtime capacity was at 70,000, and the current, unless I'm mistaken, the recommended was 50,000 from the Board of Selectmen. Unless that changed.
So we have
50
in our budget.
So, pardon if I was incorrect, but that's what the Board of Selectmen recommended based on the 70 that I looked at, about 900 hours of work that the officers could do on an overtime capacity to cover some of my additional needs. If they come back, but I don't want to publicly see. I mean, they still have to cover shifts overtimes, and that's sometimes, now they're 2-3 days in a week. They want to spend family time because they do have to work a Saturday or a Sunday every week. 2 out of the 4 weeks they're on a Saturday or Sunday 24. So, sometimes family time moves into.
Everybody on the volunteer side are unpaid, right? Including the assistant chief?
Nobody's paid on the volunteer side.
Right.
They
Okay.
get a tax stipend. Russ is there. He could talk about a tax stipend that they do get from the town. Minimal, small little, really just PPE they get. From us. So that's really all they receive. That all 26 of them.
Yeah.
So that's basically the operating budget. Did you want to add something here?
We would like to keep the discussion of the assistant chief position open.
Let me go through capital and then we'll come back to it before we do this. Yeah.
And by the way, thank Doug. We don't have to do it tonight.
Yeah.
I know you want to get a lot of things done, but
Yeah.
we're open to.
I think we want to have a little bit of discussion on it tonight, just to
Okay.
make sure we understand the facts of everything. And then as you heard me say to Russ, we've got a lot of moving pieces that we've got to
Yes.
sort through, and
We understand.
and the selectmen they've given us a budget to look at and work with. So that's
Good.
a real factor.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
So my capital should be next, yes.
Yeah.
So this year's capital, and based on my liaison meeting, I just dropped the staff vehicle for that assistant chief back in, but it was at 197 prior to taking that out, after discussions with Board of Selectmen, but PPE is required every 10 years. I got a couple different slides on this, but we're at 197. I got a slide with all these on it. So PPE, 10-year replacement plan, career members basically get a set every 5 years because they run 2 sets of gear. And with the good thing is we're getting volunteers in, but it's costing, once they pass fire one, I have to get them a compliant set of gear. So that's our average was about 7.5 sets a year that, we were purchasing, and helmets, gloves, and so on. Turnout gear washer, I'd like to add a second one based on that cancer law. That's one way, they are really stressing reducing the cancer. Right now, our current gear washer is one set of gear at a time. And unfortunately, right now it's out of service, so we're waiting on somebody out of Massachusetts to come down and fix it, but I would like to put a second one in, because not only is it getting the gear washed, all my volunteers are out of service based on that law. They shouldn't be wearing dirty gear. They're waiting for the gear to get washed one at a time. It's about an hour something cycle. So it takes a while to get the volunteers through. Even if I take them to a training burn, it's a multi-day event to get gear washed and dried.
How long does it take to get one?
Was that?
How long does it take to get one, to get a gear washer? If you ordered it today?
Honestly, I would have to ask what the
Okay.
time, I don't know the time frame, but they're all, they shouldn't be bad.
Okay.
But
It's a commercial piece.
yeah.
Okay.
Exhaust system, I think the bigger issue is going to be getting the plumbing done, and all that, but that's, it's definitely doable where we're gonna put it. Plimo vent system, we have it now, it's doing the job, except when it doesn't, when airline breaks or our compressor's down, old building, old compressor. Our current system uses air to hold the, this little black thing on the exhaust pipe. When that air's down, all our system's down. So we want to change over to a magnetic clip, as, looking at the new engine coming in and changing all our current ones over. So a magnetic clip will take out the air compressor factor on it and the airlines that dry out and break, which put the system out of service. So now every rig will, when it starts up, we don't get the diesel exhaust in the firehouse, which obviously a 1938 building, we have voids that goes up. I hear stories from the members that have been here 20, 30 years, how the upstairs was black, on a regular basis. Now with the current system, it's doing a great job. So we're just trying to enhance this. The staff vehicle kind of mentioned, I brought the number down from 90 based on what the police mentioned their vehicles are. We need to put a light package in, and radios. I definitely could bring that down. I know I could bring it down more because I don't need to put a mobile radio in there. I think I can live without a mobile radio and just have a portable for that position if it goes through, and not install the mobile radio in the car. They can use the portable. The search maze, this is a training prop. We do a lot, multiple trainings and this prop for us would be good for our SCBA training, our hose training, search training. So a lot of things we do on a regular basis throughout the year. We did bring in the state 2 years in a row. We were able to split that with other towns. So basically this year it cost us $1,500. Last year it was $2,000 for the split. But the search maze would allow us to use it continually through the year to hone in on the skills for all the members. So at different times of the year, our training plan, if we have to do quarterly SCBA, which are our breathing apparatus, and different things we could do with that. But when we do the SCBA, we can also do hose with this and so on. So it's a multi-use thing that breaks down and it can get strapped on a wall in the firehouse and can get set up on the apparatus for it. So that's kind of one of the capital items we were looking for the training. Tools and equipment.
Nick had a question. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I don't see the vehicle request on the capital program.
I've changed it tonight. So the vehicle's out, since Board of Selectmen recommendation, the vehicle's out for discussions with the liaisons last week. I put it in on this slide, back in on the slide, just to see it. So my capital slide is different from what is probably the recommendation coming in. And the PowerPoint was, yeah, the PowerPoint was behind. I didn't get it finished till today, being in a mandatory class. I was able to get it done.
It's
when I
okay.
got back.
It's all right.
So that's, sorry about that.
I think that's the list.
Yep, that's basically, it. And yeah, so search maze, tools and equipment is again, some of that rescue equipment that we're upgrading on a, you know, annual basis. We're doing a small percentage of it every year. And continue finishing up our water rescue, capital project that we started last year for the high water events. I did put in 2, single band radios. All our members get issued a radio. So as I get new volunteers, they get certified, I issue them a radio, just the way we operate. We don't carry them in the apparatus. This is our single bands for our frequency. So when replacements, ours are getting close to their end of service life. So as they break, I replace them. And my 5-year plan, you know, looking out, you'll see the major one next year. But we are going for a grant for SCBA replacement. Myself and Greg Riley are, and a couple of the officers are working on that now. Hopefully we can sell our beers that we need SCBA, which will significantly reduce that to about 10 to 15% based on what the grant offers. Our SCBA right now is 17 years old. I was, you know, and they're starting to cost a lot of money every year for maintenance. You know, repairs, I shouldn't say maintenance. Maintenance we do, and repairs are getting very expensive on these, and some of them aren't coming back in service, which is, you know, that's a safety issue moving forward. Gear price is coming down, so that could actually change moving forward. Yeah, so that's the capital plan with, you know, pickup trucks coming up in the future, and the next 2 big ones, probably refurbishments, not so much replacements. After our current engines getting bid on in the next few months that we're going out, that we asked for last year, the bid's done, it's going out to bid. Once that's all set and we're starting the design process, we're gonna get our tanker and ladder truck out for a better look to see what the best, where do we wanna go with that? Unfortunately, our ladder trucks, the trucks are growing and our station isn't, so we can't fit a ladder truck in the current ladder trucks that are out there into our bay. So refurbishment may be in line for that, which is okay. They're not bad. And then we gotta look at the tanker too. That's seen some significant wear based on a tank leak. It was warranted repaired, but they won't repair the undercarriage that got damaged from the leak. So that's kind of where we are with capital.
So, Albie, this staff vehicle for 80,000 that comes out of this year, it never shows up again in subsequent years.
The staff vehicle?
Must last
No,
for,
the 80,000, those.
My cars, under our plan, our cars are good for 20 years.
Right.
it's a one-off. You wouldn't,
It's one-off.
it would be outside of this window anyway.
Yeah, so my car was purchased in 16, based on, you know, projections, I wouldn't need to replace that for 20 years. It'd probably be earlier than that, but, you know,
Well, so I'm a little confused. What exactly did the Board of Selectmen remove?
They remove the assistant chief. but
which
what
Ah,
was tied to the staff.
Okay,
vehicle.
so if
Yeah,
your
that's what it
assistant
was.
chief comes into the
get-
picture,
yeah,
then
he needs to-
we need to add
That's-
$80,000 to the capital budget.
That's it. That's it.
And,
Right.
All right.
What was the salary for the assistant chief again?
it's in the personnel is 120.
120. Okay, the capital looks fine. And the only question I would ask is this, you know, we didn't see what is it? The gear washer before.
How much?
No, I'm just saying, I ask you every year if you need anything else. That seems like we probably needed that a year or 2 ago. No?
I would say yes.
I mean,
yeah,
look, easy, look backwards, I understand, but,
Yeah,
okay, is there anything, I mean, that's a pretty lean, at the end of the day, capital budget for,
no, capital.
All right.
It's all small
I
tools.
asked
I mean,
We
the
make
hard,
things
yeah,
last.
the hard part with tools and equipment, it's a lot of small things,
sure.
but they're all capital.
Yeah.
They'll last 8 to 10
Yeah,
years.
yeah, okay.
You know, and so on. That's why it's 15 moving forward. There are some like extrication tools that we know that they're getting ready to come to their end of service life. So you can see those moving And we decided to split that up over 3 purchases, so that's why those are so reasonably big, over 6 years there, so.
So one question then on so I was gonna ask a couple of questions on the assistant chief, but did anyone have any other questions they want to go through first?
I'm trying to tie up the 5-year capital, this up here to what's in our budget book.
I haven't looked that closely.
Page 133.
Yeah, I got it. Look that closely. It's a challenge. So next year,
Yeah, I
130.
took out a SCBA. I took out SCBA cylinders, which was in
Okay.
your budget book. I found that today, and if we buy SCBA, either grant or we end up purchasing new, we'll end up with
Okay.
cylinders.
So that's the.
So I took 10 out.
That's 410. That's why it goes to 520. His goes to 527.
Okay.
I had 10,000. I missed that with if we buy SCBA.
Oh, no, that's there. I'm sorry. That's in there. That's
Yeah,
in 20,
I'm-
26,
It
27.
was $60,000.
Oh, no, you have it in 20. Okay, well, it's off a year. In our book, it's 26, 27 for the 410. There, it's 25, 26. That's the difference.
That was definitely I moved the 410 up this year,
See it?
and we're gonna know
Right
by
there, but it's in
September,
26, 27.
October if we get the grant.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why I just wanted, if the grant comes in, that'll significantly reduce, but I wanted something in there to show that we're gonna need SCBA. Could I push it into 27? Possibly, when it get closer, but the grant, I would need the 10% match in 26.
So we just need to make sure.
So should I pull it forward?
It sounds like what I'm hearing from you is you want it in there for next year. You've got work to do to figure the grant out and every other thing,
Yeah, we wanna
including
know
the price.
this.
I put it in next year. Yeah, I don't think you want it out in 26, 7.
No, I need something in 26, because if we get the grant, we have a
Yeah.
performance period.
I just pull it forward one.
It's 18 to 24 months, so we would have to pay some part of it in 26.
Okay.
Yana, you're right. This shows security cameras, for example, 15. And this
I
shows
reduced that.
25.
Sorry, I did reduce that today. I really messed you up by taking one of your items. Sorry.
We're not used to you doing that.
I'm sorry, I reduced it by 10 because the guy finally got back to me. So, sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody, Michael or Bob, anything you want to add before we?
Yeah, this is Colin Dobbin. Chief, when we had our call with you with Bob Hamill and Michael Chen, you talked a little bit about the number of hours you personally are putting in, and you didn't really discuss it here, with the entire board. I got the impression that you're putting in mega hours currently. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm not, this stuff is part of my regular assignment, but when it comes to the training, doing the volunteer training, multiple times a week, participating in that to assist with getting those firefighters up and going. We have a lot of outside, the company meeting that I'm asked to come to provide a chief's report. I go to that. So those are some extra things that I do, and I enjoy the training. I like going to that, but those are things that I need to do. A lot of the other, some of the outside meetings, for volunteers in our area are at night. So those get, counted. So it's probably an average of, I'll go light, I'll say 50 hours a week, 55 hours a week that I'm doing something it's fire department related, that we're participating in, and not just my chief stuff. It's stuff that's good for the community, good for the members that I'm out there doing. So I think that's what you're referencing, right? Colm, I think that's where.
So I thought you said upwards of 60, but whatever. I think you're being more modest right now.
So that's.
Are you eligible for overtime pay?
No.
Yeah, so that's a burden.
Yeah, and again, I mean, with the number two, I would definitely look at a little more clarity on flexing hours. Because the nights that we are, like this week, we're doing platoon training. 4 nights this week, the volunteers are coming in small groups, the shift's doing it. And sometimes, you know, they don't have a trainer that can do everything,
Right,
so.
but you're
that's-
doing assistant chief work. So the question again to the selectmen is, you put in $50,000 overtime. Who do you think is gonna get that?
The hope, and Albie, you should talk about the conversation that you had.
The hope is to, you know, assign those officers those details that, you know, when they are in on overtime, is to do the handle the apparatus stuff. You know, not some of it is repairs that they'll do, but they'll handle the administration of the apparatus. They're gonna develop the training plans, develop the objectives to do that, manage the pre-planning. You know, so they can review the other shifts work. They're gonna, you know, do stuff like that. So those are the things that
These
will
would be
have
the
those.
captains?
What's that?
These would be the captains.
Captains or lieutenants, could be either one. And
So-
there's some stuff firefighters can do also that they have an interest in.
All right,
So
so-
not as much.
So it's part of the assistant chief function that you're able to allocate to the officers of the company.
Yes, besides the ones I listed, but
But
that's
certain
the-
administrative tasks
correct.
would remain with you.
Correct. But yeah, some of those, I mean, they're all administrative tasks that they'll pretty much be doing.
Yeah, but
It's just that I need
Yeah.
they would have to be on separate than their shift time to do
Right,
that.
and
that's-
so that's the overtime allocation.
That's the OT allocation, and yeah, with the hope, yeah, I haven't really talked to the officers and, you know, seeing if this is even possible for them to give that much time.
Yeah.
To do that, and some of it's training too, some of the trainings that they could come in, the specialties that they would do for all 4 shifts, I would have to bring them in on the other shifts too, but that would all be included,
When's your next labor contract?
25, July of 25.
So you're like almost at the same time as the police.
Yep.
Right? So if we ask them for overtime now, will that have an echo during the negotiations on a contract?
Yeah, it's for this that we're asking for the administration overtime. I think it'll be more I'm worried about repercussions now because based on the current contract, I might have to, you know, go off a list. I don't know if that's possible yet. I haven't had that conversation with the union after, you know, we only talked a couple weeks ago. But that would be one thing, because that'll be potential pushback. Hey, you're asking the officers to do all this. Yeah, are you going out of rotation? I don't want to say get away with it, but I bring the officers in for their training on a quarterly basis and the staff meeting, which, okay, it's a staff meeting, I get, you know, so that doesn't affect it, but if I start bringing in the officers on a regular basis, I could be in violation of the contract. I haven't gotten that far yet to say yes, yay or nay on that. I'm more worried that they're gonna have the time to put in off duty, you know, with their personal lives and, you know, that's my bigger concern. And I don't wanna look like hey, you just asked for 70 grand, we gave you 50 and I only spent 20 of it and I still didn't get nothing done. Because that's my worry if they can't commit to the hours.
Yeah, because the overtime is voluntary. You can't say.
Correct.
You have to do this.
Correct.
So nobody may volunteer.
Is overtime seasonal? Is overtime seasonal?
No, ours,
Pretty steady?
it's
throughout the
pretty
year?
steady. I mean, we're a 6 minimum maximum, so anytime somebody takes off, you know, that's why mine's reasonably, you know, the same every year. You know, it's X amount of holidays they take off, X amount of vacation days. My variable sick time, training time is usually pretty consistent going across because they get allocated training time.
Right, when we went from 4 firefighters on a shift to 6 firefighters on a shift, part of the math behind that was to make the overtime more manageable and more, even better yet, more predictable. And that's been proven over the years to be correct.
So if I added up the overtime correctly, it looks like in 22, it was about 827,000. 23 was 865. This year, the budget's over about a million, a little over, and then this request is 1,000,001. That sound about right?
Yes,
Okay, and then throws the 50 in for sure.
with the 50, right?
With the 50 in. So what is the question I would have was, what does the assistant chief role do? How does it impact that, if at all? There's the 50, I guess, potentially.
Honestly, it would probably just impact that 50,000 of overtime. And maybe some of the overtime other right now is very high because we had a retirement. But some of those things where I would, I'm available to go pick up a truck or bring somebody to get a truck. That's one of the things that's accounted for and I have to hire somebody back for. But having two of us can make that a little easier. So it'll be a small impact, but not huge on the overtime because that's just their time off. There's not much that they're doing that they're,
And just looking at your org chart that you gave us, and this is an HR question and you don't feel any need to answer it. And if we need to do an executive session kind of meeting about HR, we would be fine with that. Here's the question. You've got the 4 captains and the lieutenants. This is a higher end. This is someone you want to bring into this role. This isn't a promote up and replace.
they
Have we thought of-
have the opportunity to apply.
Okay.
And they'll get their resume will get graded just like with
Okay.
anyone that comes from the outside. So
Because that's not a net cost of 120 possibly.
that's a,
It's not a net, it wouldn't be necessarily a net new cost of 120 if it's a promote. You already have that person on salary.
but I have to fill.
But at some level lower, everybody can move up a notch.
Yeah.
I don't want to organize it for you. I'm not organizing it for you. I don't know any of the.
I could bring somebody in, yeah, I would bring somebody in for a lower rate in the first few years. The firefighter would be huge because 5 years it takes them to get the top step. So, right, that would be the, small, yeah.
No. Okay, it's just helpful for us to think about
Can
it.
I ask you back, because when we were talking about the 26 volunteers and 50% of them are probationary, so that's the training you're talking about, right? And now does that get helped by, so is that something that this assistant can do as well? Or how does that impact your time?
Yes, that would free me up on my extra hours at night. That would definitely help on the night and if we flex, now I won't feel so bad and coming in a little later, stay until 8:30. Our training just got over 8:45 tonight. So I don't feel bad staying late that night, but I have so much to do between 7 and the 12. So that would offset that a little bit. And that's where I would look at flexing between that position, and my position, and it provides better coverage for response. Myself and Russ were even trying to respond to commercial alarms where, when we look at NFPA standards, there's really supposed to be a chief officer on those calls, and that's something that, we do during the day when we're here. We'll roll in at night and go to some of those also, based on trying to meet that NFPA standard. We're nowhere near meeting that, but that's where, because there's a couple times they're like, it's Bankwell again, I'm not gonna go. It's during the day, they would have called 911, so we opt not to go, but we're not meeting that standard in that case.
And so, because you're in this circumstance here where you have a lot of probation, right? So what is it typically, if, I know you're in this cycle now where you have like 50% of them, but I guess my question is that demand on you going to decrease after, how much longer are they probationary? And at what point does that roll off? And does that free up some of your time?
Right, I would say no, it's not so much the probationary it's just the volunteer company, because they train at night and they train, we were training twice a month at night. Now we spread it out a little because we have so many, and that wouldn't matter if they're certified or they're probationary. What we did is looked at the volunteers are not meeting what I need to for ISO, so we're trying to find more ways to get the additional hours in and the skills in. So the training time wouldn't decrease whether it's probationary or regular. The regular firefighters have a regiment every year that they have to do in the amount of hours. ISO requires 196 hours of structural firefighter training a year. That's right now it's impossible to hit for the volunteers. career side's hitting it because they're there.
Yeah.
And we're trying to help them hit that. I don't agree with ISO's number. I think it should be competence, but that's a whole nother story. But they're doing it because they're on duty and they're able to hit that. But that's 2.5 hours just of training every day for each member. And that's not including if they take off. So you're assuming when they take off, they fill another shift on another day. So they're hitting those hours every day. And there's some other stuff. I mean, it's probably with the non-ISO structural firefighting, they probably have to meet closer to 300 hours per year in training to meet the ISO, to get full credit. They're not gigging us, they're not putting us out of business. It's just about full credit, that we're trying to meet.
It also sounds like the fire marshal's office is stretched,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because if you have to do all these inspections, primarily of commercial establishments, plus like on the 4th of July, you have to be at people discharging fireworks. Plus you have to be at the town fireworks and.
So Memorial Day, 4th of July and.
Yeah, well, there are plenty of pop-up fireworks displays that you can't possibly be at.
Well, those are.
That we hear all over, that we hear all over town.
Those I don't know about.
Yeah.
Labor Day, Memorial Day.
It's a public meeting.
Labor Day, Memorial Day. and-
Right, correct. You might get one private resident that does a real show on an annual basis, and that's taxed.
We typically get one of those a year.
Yeah.
Like the country club.
Yeah, so the country club is every Memorial Day, every Labor Day. And then we have family force. And then there's usually a wedding or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Sprinkled in.
So if something is scheduled, for instance, through Wavening, then you would know about it and then you would be.
Yeah, they need a permit.
Yeah.
Permit comes down from the state. They file for a permit with the State Division of Fire and Explosives.
Yeah, but it sounds like your assistants, since they're professional fire fighters, on those particular dates might not be available. Is this often the case?
Correct, yeah. So John Picorni, my deputy, always has this 4th of July event on the same day as us. There is a club that does Memorial Day, Labor Day, probably he could cover if I needed him. But Memorial Day, 4th of July. And I don't mind. My kids are gone. I don't really have a life anymore.
So a big thank you from the town, but
seriously.
Albie, what's the full complement of, like, is there a number of volunteers? Like, is it just an ever expanding list of anybody who wants to become? Or like, is there a capped number that like, once you've got that complement, you don't take more volunteers, or how does that work?
I didn't explore that one yet, but, no, we don't have the cap, but we'll take, if they're, meet all the qualifications, we'll take them in. Some don't, like we had a lot that came in last year that, they realized fire service wasn't for them, never went through the basic training, ended up resigning. So we were up to close to 30 at one point this year. And, they cleaned the rolls out, coming into the summer or late spring or late fall rather, they cleaned the rolls up. So, I think the number 20 to 25, 26 has been the consistent going on. But we've been hiring off the volunteers, so that hurts us. But it's great for the department. It hurts the company. But we're getting very good employees from the volunteers, which is another reason why we try to, keep that cohesiveness going. And they want to stay.
Our last 7 hires
Really?
are all from, and they compete during during the interview process. They compete on every level with people from the entire area who are also qualified. And when we go through the interview process, we have discovered, probably because of the great training they get here, that
Interesting.
Well, they've been more qualified and we don't guarantee them, we don't guarantee our volunteers a job.
Yeah.
If they want to apply. We promise them an interview.
An opportunity.
If
Yeah.
they're qualified.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
That's a good story.
so
I didn't
they're
know.
working-
That's great.
They're working just to get that interview.
I like that.
So what does the volunteer chief do to help you? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out sort of that role.
He's my HR person
Okay,
for the most part with the volunteers, so he
Okay.
handles a lot of that stuff.
okay.
Obviously, I pretty much handle the computer side of it, so as they're getting physicals, they're getting their information in, that's coming to me during the day and I put it in, but. Russ handles a lot of the HR stuff with them, scheduling them for their platoon nights and so on. Tracks their time and their volunteer standby and their calls for the tax incentive and so on. He gets one of the platoon nights that he does the training. He's required for the same training as everybody else. So,
But he can't relieve you in the evening training of the volunteers.
oh, yeah, he took it, he was last night, he did. That, his night, I did Monday this week, he did
Okay.
last night, so, oh yeah, he does, yeah. Yeah, what we did with the platoon nights and it's put more stress on myself, but, it's the right thing to do for them. We just made, instead of them all coming on Thursdays, all 24 of them now, we split it up 6 a night, because it's way too many to handle, 24 people to do the skills, and it's a lot of standing around. What we want is 24 people, 6 at a clip to do more skills and get more repetition. So we get them to that same level as a career firefighter that's doing 200 hours a year in the firehouse, and they're that comfortable with their equipment. That's where we want to get all the volunteers to. And that's why bringing it down to 6, we're seeing it more often. We're doing dinners just like at the firehouse and then getting out to training and doing something like the last 4 nights we've been over on Carter Street. At a vacant and doing a primary search, because that's something that from my 2.5 years here, with 6 people on duty, my first 2 volunteers are the people searching your bedrooms. Because my career staff's getting a line in place and getting a water supply. My 2 volunteers that show up are, all right, you're going upstairs, go search the bedrooms and look for people. So that's something that we focused on, last night. We're not so worried about, they like extrication and doing car wrecks and doing that fun stuff. It's pretty cool as but it's not something that they get hands-on all the time unless they're riding out, which we're getting more of now too. We just instituted volunteer standby time. So they're getting credit for staying at the firehouse, which they didn't have up until this year. So, or end of last year. So they're, for every so many hours, they get credit for a call. So now I have basically a 7th person on for 15% of the time now. So someone else is riding on the fire truck. So that's great for us, not waiting for them to come from home.
Are the volunteers local people?
Most of them, yeah. I mean, they're all touching towns. They have to be at least a touching town. So yeah.
We can't get
How many are on your candidates?
Oh, I'd have to look at the iPad. Probably half. Yeah. There's a few from Wilton, Stanford, Darien. We got couple dual citizenship with Darien and New Haven.
Live within 5 miles.
Darien and New
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
to,
Problem with
You can't say that, right? Only the fire service we can say.
they have to hear the horn.
Josh, do you have all the changes or the updates on all the things we went through? You may want to compare notes because you had a couple different numbers for different capital and make sure the operating numbers.
I have the lower security cameras, the change 410.
Okay.
The staff vehicles getting headed back, or what's that?
So what we'll do, here's what we'll do. We'll talk to the liaisons. I think hearing your point of view and your requests and all that, we haven't even talked about this. So, again, we don't vote on this thing until March. We might have to come back to you, some questions and sort it out together. And any other trade-offs or something like that. So I know Bob and Coleman and Michael will need input, obviously, from you as well. So that's how we'll have to work it. That's okay.
We understand the budget process. We understand what the town needs. We're taxpayers. We get it.
Yeah.
You know,
It's adding a person is tough because you get a long-term embedded, obviously cost, but and there's a point where you get to a point where you've run out of, you need a body, you need a person.
Yeah, and I think I was a little less prepared knowing that we had it in there and we were hiring in the process. So not having that defense or even number, like hard numbers until the week before, after we had that had the conversation with the board of selectmen, and that's when I had to start pulling it. Because I didn't, well, Jack Hennessy fought for my position, and it's like, okay, we'll keep it funded for that half year. And, when we started in the early, November.
Yeah, could the assistant chief also be the deputy OEM?
That's, in the conversation prior, yes, deputy, yes, I would never support myself or chief, any of us as full OEM because it's a full-time job, and with us, and I'll coming from my history in Norwalk, having a full-time OEM and doing what they do, no fire chief, no police chief is going to put the effort in that the EOC director is doing right now. I'm not going to the schools and being able to get them to do the stuff they're supposed to be doing. That, like Russ said, we have departments to run. It's like, I'll tell, I could tell the school system, hey, won't you get, you need to fill this thing out, getting in there and really doing what they're supposed to, working with Health and Human Services. I mean, I watched the girl in Norwalk was, she was deputy, the fire chief was technically, the mayor wouldn't put a non-department head as emergency management director, just the titles. She did everything that the OEM had to do. The chief was just a figurehead there, but she did everything cross discipline, and that was so needed in that case. That's the good thing, and it's great that we made that jump to go there. And the deputy, sure, I mean, to take that spot and say, okay, I'll cover this weekend, and
Yeah, that's as the deputy role was described by Russ in the previous.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I think we
I
have.
don't have a question, but
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
I do have a just quick comment. Obviously, thank you, Chief, for presenting to Colin and Bob and me ahead of time. So we got to look at the presentation. Just wanted to say, people moved to New Canaan really for two main reasons: for the school system and for safety. And so I'm empathetic. I think Colin and Bob are to, providing the resources needed to keep our schools number one, as well as keep our town safe. So I think we're empathetic to what our chief is saying and what he needs. And so we should take a closer look at his needs, his department's needs to fulfill the duties. Because I think it's really important that he has the resources, to protect our families and our neighborhoods. So thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
We appreciate you all hearing us out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to mention one thing, and it's not much, but maybe it helps. So I had my other part-time staff left early December. Our thought was, it's the holidays, it's a little bit slow. We could get through winter before we replace them. I would certainly be willing to forego that position. If chief were to get a deputy chief.
So maybe there's a thought of coming back with one of the asks for you then is there something you can do to offset some of that, in a way of taking care of the role, but not absorbing all of the cost, like suggestions along those lines. Obviously, great suggestion. But that's the inside sort of baseball. We can't tell you what to do, but those are really good ideas, good suggestions. Okay, thanks for putting that up.
Todd, one other, just if we're going to come back and pursue this, I know we would need a car for a vehicle for the position, but also I assume radios, gear, what is the fully loaded? I don't know if we talked about that, but that should
should know
be
that.
known before we do it.
Yeah.
We should-
I'll
good
get
point,
a
Bob.
little better handle. And the radio is in that car price, so the radio's already there. But I didn't think of gear, but we can definitely, I'll get the hard numbers on that.
Okay, look up the numbers on it, yeah.
Okay. Anything else, team?
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for everything. Motion to adjourn? All right, so move. Maria, second. Michael Chan with a fast hand. All in favor?
Thank you.
All right,
everybody.
opposed?